Review. Ooh. Okay, got it.
You got the intro ready to play, Aaron? You know,
Oh god.
or get your geek on intro.
I will once I put the YouTube one on. Once the YouTube one's all nice and set.
Okay, share on timeline public. Go live. I think it'll tell us here.
Yep.
Oh, shit.
We are live.
Excuse me.
So
A yawn.
I am Keith Miller. We on board here. We have Robert Haley, Aaron Shapiro, and Crystal. So what we're gonna do here, this was kind of an idea that I wanted to do, kind of revisit some older movies and see if they are still good. Have they aged?
Or if they were ever good.
Or if you're Robert.
I'm not throwing shade at this movie. I'm just saying, you know, as we review these movies, it might be whether they were ever good.
There's literally shade.
Being
being specific about this movie.
So, first movie we're going to talk about, if this becomes a series, is going to be, I'm trying to share my screen. Oh, I gotta press that button. There we go.
Pressing buttons. Oh. Yes.
Is Ghostbusters, the first Ghostbusters. Written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. Directed and produced by
Mr. Ivan Reitman.
Ivan Reitman, yes. Sorry. Directed and produced. My notes went haywire on me. Too many screens. So let me turn this off so I'm not getting blindsided like that.
We're professionals.
We are so professional.
We are as professional as the Ghostbusters.
I'm pro.
About right. About right.
Yeah.
You got a few tabs open there, bud.
I know. There we go.
I just want to say I'm Ernie Hudson. Obviously.
All right.
There we go. All right, we're back.
That makes
Sorry.
sense.
So, movie originally released on June 8th, 1984. Mostly positive reviews. So one of the things that I like to pay attention to for movies and its watchability is its IMDb score. Everybody, you know, the big thing was Rotten Tomatoes, and I don't really trust that at all. But for IMDb, for me, has been consistently good for, you know, a quick rating. Anything above a 5 is worth watching. If it's over 6, it's a good movie. Anything over 7 is a great movie. So, yeah, that's my opinion. Robert can argue all he wants.
I like that IMDb, they give you a critic score and a watcher score too, which is really nice, because just because it's critically acclaimed doesn't mean it's watchable for the masses.
Right. And Amazon Prime, that's like one of the scores that you always see. So it's like, that's how I knew something was up with Bruce Willis, because for a 3-year period, he was doing nothing but like 3 movies. So I was like, what is going on with Bruce Willis? Turns out. Yeah. Anyways, 7.8 on IMDb. Awards and nominations. It was actually nominated, I think, nominated for 2 and won 2 Oscars. One for music for Ray Parker Jr. I forgot how many weeks he was actually. Who Are You Gonna Call song was actually out for like 13 weeks. That's
incredibly catchy. Can we talk about the redo for that and how I love Fall Out Boy and they totally screwed that song up? Have you ever heard that?
Yeah.
It's horrible. It's just not good. I hated it. And I love Fall Out Boy. It just ruined the spirit of the song for me.
I think
Does that make sense?
I think the problem I had with it is people got mad at it for no reason. Because people were mad at it because it had that line, "Bustin' makes me feel good," which is in the original song.
It
but
absolutely people blamed him. Is.
And they're like, no, that's why it sucks. I'm like, no, it's actually not a bad song.
I mean, not that Patrick Stump or Pete Wentz wouldn't put something like that on there, but sorry, I just watched my cat like run into the wall. My bad.
There's a good clip there.
Right.
And then the other Oscar it won was for special effects, which I've kind of, some of my notes include the fact that there was very little like actual like any kind of like CGI, well, not really, whatever they had back then, like stop motion animation or anything like that. They
Right.
actually used a lot of like old school effects in the movie.
All mostly practical, of like a lot of puppets, like all the Hounds of Gozer and stuff. Yeah,
Right.
definitely.
Basically, when the hounds are like running around the city, you can tell it's stop motion animation. But
are those done by Henson? Are the puppets? I think that they are.
I don't remember. I forget the name. Bruno stands out. I'm butchering this review and this discussion because I don't have all the names right in front of me. But
Okay, it's the first one.
I'm just gonna say that there must not have been a lot of competition for the Special Effects Academy Award in 1984.
I mean, it was 1984. As somebody who is also from that year and is in that vintage, I get it.
I'm just saying there are several scenes of like a matte painting of New York City that looks so bad. And the 1977 Star Wars movie also used matte paintings, and they just had a much better painter. That's all I'm gonna say.
There's that. But then, like, look at every movie from like the mid '90s. They used what was it, Toronto?
But they didn't win Oscars for their special effects. That's all I'm saying.
All right, John Bruno was the guy I was thinking. Him, Richard Edlund, Chuck Gasper, and Mark Vargo are the ones that won the Oscar for best special visual.
Congratulations to them. They worked hard.
And don't forget what TV quality was like your we didn't, I don't think they had VHS by then, maybe just coming out. So TVs were,
it wasn't. I don't think it was, because I remember that
this on the big screen.
TVs were like topping out at what, 480p, quality wise, of even that. So
I mean, there were 2 units, right? Like that's oof.
So, well, by then it was also the 4:3 ratio, I think is what it was.
Yeah, and there's a note that I have about that as well. So when I watched this, I wasn't even born yet when it came out in 1984. And so I seem to remember watching this on cable replays as a kid. And my parents may have rented it from the movie, the old movie gallery, or back in the day, when
say its name, it's Blockbuster.
There's also Hollywood Video.
My city didn't have Blockbuster for a while.
All right, Family Video.
We had one of those family videos with the Old West bar doors in the back room.
Oh God, yes. That was my hometown too. It was called the 99-cent movie.
Yeah. So I first watched this as a kid, early 90s, that I can remember. And then, like I said, I think I watched it on VHS. So the movie was originally written by Dan Aykroyd, and he had the original script for this was totally different than what we ended up getting. Like, it was supposed to be futuristic with him and John Belushi, and it was supposed to be almost like a, kind of like other John Belushi movies with Dan Aykroyd and like that, with almost like a Marx Brothers type of feel, but like a grungier type of thing where they're like ghost janitors running around. It was the description.
Were they trying to set themselves up as like the next Abbott and Costello kind of thing before Belushi passed away?
Probably. I mean, that's what him, like the other, what was it, like, was it 1941 was the other movie they did together?
The Blues Brothers.
This was Blues Brothers
was the big
too.
one. Yeah.
Yeah. So the script was totally overhauled at some other point when Reitman and Harold Ramis came on. So thankfully, and yeah, I think that was, and we can just start talking about, I just want to make sure I wasn't forgetting any other aspects.
No, you're good.
I'm exactly 17 days older than this movie. So
7.
I think everyone else here is not to give away the lady's age, although she just did. The rest of us are all younger than this movie, I believe.
Yeah. So movie opens up New York Public Library. And if you notice, the library is, like, while they're filming it, is under remodel, and there's scaffolding all around, and I think that kind of adds to the Gothic look they were trying to go for. So I remember reading that they tried to add as many like gothic or creepy shapes and fixtures and gargoyles and things like that.
So before we get into the movie, Keith, you mentioned that you saw it a bunch as a kid, right, on VHS. I think we should all talk about how we came to this movie before we like actually get into the movie.
I'm not the only one here.
Yeah, you're good.
He's like, I guess
trying to help you out.
Yeah, we're not just voices in your head.
So I'll just go. I am not the nostalgia glasses guy with this movie. The first time I saw this movie was probably 6 or 7 years ago. So came to it knowing all of the hype. Everybody talking about this movie as being one of the greatest comedies of all time. A unique horror comedy mix from the 80s. And so that was the first time I saw it, and the second time I watched it was last night. So I have now seen it twice.
There you go. What about you, Chris?
Well, it's probably a larger part of my childhood, mostly because I have 3 brothers. And so like we used to watch it, like probably it was on rotation once a month until the second one came out. And then it was on rotation for once a month. So like I definitely have like a little bit of nostalgia because it was kind of like my mom was a huge horror movie fan. So this was kind of her way to introduce us into that kind of genre with it being, I guess, child friendly. But I definitely, as I got older and watched it, I didn't love it as much. I will say that much. It definitely, I think I grew out of most of it, but I still enjoy it. I just don't have the same love that I had for it.
See, and I think I watched it. I mean, gosh, I was born after the first one. I honestly remember the second one a lot more than the first one, because that came out later, like after I was around. And I remember watching the first one a couple of times because my dad liked Bill Murray. So I remember we watched it a few times because of Bill Murray. I actually like Dan Aykroyd. I think he's funny. But yeah, I don't remember watching it a whole lot. I'm actually the one more into like horror and like scary stuff and that kind of comedy. My family was never into that stuff. My dad was more into the action films, like Steven Seagal and all those guys back in the 80s and 90s. So yeah, I don't remember watching it a whole lot. Again, I remember the second one a lot because that's the one where I was old enough to start seeing it pop up on TV and I'd be like, oh, I want to watch this one. It's funny. And I would watch it. But yeah, that's kind of my take on it. But it was interesting watching it because I think it's been a while since I've watched since I've watched it. Because I think I watched it once. No, I watched the second one right before Afterlife came out. And so that was like what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, maybe?
Something like that.
Yeah. So that's probably the last time I watched it. So yeah. Now what do we got?
Well, what about you, Keith? What's your relationship with it?
Well, like I mentioned before, I think I wasn't old enough when it came out. Like I wasn't even around when it first came out. So like in the 90s when my dad was another smart aleck that loved Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd and all that. Like I remember he absolutely loved the Blues Brothers. So, it's got Dan Aykroyd in there. So obviously that's going to be, and then the second one, I remember that one a lot more, because it came out when I was a kid. So, I think, you know what, I wouldn't even be surprised my childhood. I probably watched the second one before I even watched the first one, where my memories are all jammed up. Wait, there was one before this kind of thing. So,
the second one's definitely more vivid in my mind. I think the Statue of Liberty just stuck with me. I think that's just one of those things. It's like it was the 90s. They needed something poppy, so they're like ooze.
Right. Yeah, we'll save that discussion for the next one about Ghostbusters. How about that? So, all right. Now is the time we want to go into the kind of chronological. All right.
Let's do it.
I'm not leaving anybody out this time. So yeah, like I was saying before, opens on the New York Public Library. In the exterior and the interior that you first see is actually in the New York Public Library. And then when you see the librarian go down into the basement, that's actually an LA library where they were doing the filming in there. And I remember that like there's books that are floating around, and like they have, and then the card system that uses the Dewey Decimal System. What is, I forget the name. The drawers are coming out. The drawers are coming out, and the cards are flying. And I remember them saying that that was basically a false wall that they built, and they had air tubes behind that was blowing those doors open and flinging those things everywhere. So more of that practical, you know. So, and then you see the lady kind of freak out, and then you get about a 2-second intro, your first taste of Ray Parker Jr. as it opens with the Ghostbusters logo. And you see another statue that's kind of odd looking, kind of, you know, there. And then you go to the Columbia University, where they actually did film some of this in Columbia University. And one thing that stands out is the first thing you see inside is there's a door. I think it says psychology or parapsychology. But on it, written in like red blood or something along those lines, it says Venkman burn in hell. And that was actually written in the script. It wasn't, you know, anything odd. Like they actually wrote that in there. So we see Peter Venkman having his electrical clairvoyant tests, where he's obviously not taking advantage of the situation with the pretty blonde and the stressed out male participant who's getting paid $5. So, and
a lot of money back then.
Hey.
That's a lot of money right now.
And that story is actually based on real electrical shock treatments at colleges. So everything that Dan Aykroyd wrote in this, he's pulled from real stuff. Like there's aspects like Dan Aykroyd is a serious card carrying member of the paranormal, you know, hardcore population. So
didn't he do like a ghost show for a while?
A ghost what?
Where the Dan Aykroyd did some kind of ghost show for a while.
Probably.
And I just want to jump in and just talk about like the opening at the library scene. I was throwing some shade at special effects earlier. It's cool in this scene. I like what they do. I like the cards flying and everything. That was cool. That's a cool scene. And getting introduced to the scumbag of the movie, which is Peter Venkman. A perfect introduction. You know everything you need to know about his character from this scene, and he never changes. There is no growth for Peter Venkman. He is always a scumbag, and I'm okay with that. I like that's who he is.
Consistency matters.
Well, there's maybe one or two parts where he shows some maturity, but we'll get to that. So
I think it's always self-serving, whether or not he makes a decision that's more mature than others. It's always self-serving.
Yeah, I think it's just a question of how passive aggressive or sarcastic he's being. So,
not wrong.
Yeah. So, and one thing I like that I thought about watching the electrical shop part is the guy is actually the guy who he's tricking and shocking for the hell of it to impress the pretty blonde co-ed is actually getting the clairvoyant like guesses right. And I wondered, I'm like, is he actually supposed to be clairvoyant, or is the electrical shock inducing a clairvoyant effect on this student?
Yep.
You know, is it a stress-induced clairvoyance, or is he just naturally clairvoyant?
Or is he just lucky as hell, except that he's unlucky as hell because Venkman's the one running the experiment?
Probably. So
can we talk about like the trope that is, like, especially for 80s movies, with the smart guy just being an absolute prick and everybody just is okay with it?
I mean, well, and this is the thing too, is that, you know, we talked about me coming to this movie for the first time just, 6-7 years ago as an adult, and right off the bat, I don't like Venkman as a character. Bill Murray is great. I love Bill Murray, and he's portraying the character great, but I don't like Venkman. He's a slime bag, and I don't like what he's doing in these moments. And I don't understand, and we're fast forwarding a little bit, but I don't understand why Sigourney Weaver ever likes him. he never changes his behavior. He never like does anything different. And so in that moment when she decides to like go on a date with him, I'm like, but why? You know he's a slime ball. You characterized that earlier in the movie. Why? And it's just like, is it just because he's the funny guy? Is that what we're going with?
He goes
the funny guy.
Or what? Some creepy ghost painting or Rick Moranis?
Or be single. It's okay. You can just be single.
That.
Here's the thing I feel 80s.
Like women couldn't do that.
And that's why I feel that this movie does have that little bit of like, it doesn't hit well anymore with that scene, especially that scene, because you can't do that scene nowadays. That's going to be like, oh, you're over masculine or you're being misogynistic, something. It's going to give you a lot of downplay
torture
on it.
Trigger, right, a bunch of stuff.
So to me that scene doesn't hold.
Which part are we talking about?
The part where they're at the fountain, right, is where she finally accepts.
So that's later. Yeah, that's later.
Well, yeah. If you notice her behavior at that point, she's a little more open to him. Because when they last see each other before the fountain, she's thinking that he's kind of a whack, and she's even telling him, she's like, you don't act like a scientist, you act more like a game show host.
I still love that line, by the way.
Yes,
that is a great line.
Oh yeah, yes, because we all know exactly what that means when she says you're acting like a game show. We're like,
she just painted a picture.
Yep.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's a great line.
So she's probably feeling like he's not being a serious like paranormal, exterminator research and all that. But then during the montages, you see that she's watching the commercials and seeing them on the news. And so he's gaining some credibility in her eyes. And he still is trying to figure out what's going on with her apartment. So the fact that he's actually following it, we found out there's Zool and Gozer and all this other stuff.
But he's clearly just trying to get into her pants, and he's been doing that from the moment he met her, and she correctly calls him on it.
I mean,
I don't know.
That sounds like every man ever in history for most, and just for movies, period. That's a trope and a half. Like,
it absolutely is, but it doesn't mean I like it. It doesn't mean that he shouldn't have to do the work to actually like impress this woman rather than just have her be like, oh, actually, I guess he is good at his job, so it's okay. He's a sleazeball.
Not wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are in relationships like that, so.
But it doesn't mean they're healthy.
Oh, absolutely.
No, definitely not healthy. This relationship at the end of this movie is not healthy. Let's just be clear. No. This is not going to end well for the two of them.
Well, that's because it ends in marshmallows.
Well, spoiler alert, it didn't end. And that's the creepiest part.
So, wrong. I don't know. I don't think he crosses the like, I know he's got the cringe going, but I don't think he, like today we were talking about
when he chooses not to take advantage of her while she's possessed. That is a redeeming quality.
That's like he's a douchebag, but he's not a creep.
Like,
right
at that point, he knows he could take advantage of her, but then he's like, she's like, "Don't you want inside of me?" He's like, "I think there's not enough room.
There's already in there.
Yeah, there's two of you in there, so
no vacancy."
And I think that's what saves him. I think from being the complete cringe is that scene. Because if he would have taken advantage for it, then it's like, okay, this is completely cringe. Yeah. But he didn't. So it's like, okay, he's not terrible, but you're borderline.
What's that line in Guardians? It's like we know we're jerks, but we're not 100%. Like we're not assholes.
Yeah.
I
don't know if I believe everyone's 100% an asshole.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That was a redeeming quality. So like, and again, too, like he never shows like in the relationship that he proves to be disloyal or anything like that. I mean, so he's not like the worst guy, but he is like an ass. Right. So,
I mean, I guess if we also fast forward to Afterlife, and I think it's one of the end credits, we see a callback to this film with everything.
Yeah, they're still, it shows that they're still together.
Yeah, so not wrong.
Right.
So. All right.
Let's get away from relationship therapy.
So, we fast forward to after the shock treatment. One thing I do notate is Dan Aykroyd's haircut that's very notable.
But you
He
don't get
insisted on
overweight.
having that type of goofy haircut. I remember reading that in the notes. And then you see the three of them responding to the library. And right off the bat, I noticed that Egon, one of my favorite quotes, they just to illustrate how committed he is to being science, a scientist. Venkman's like, hey, do you remember trying to drill a hole in your head? And then Egon's like, that would have worked if you hadn't stopped me.
I love the dynamic between especially these three. I mean, when and I'm blanking on the actor's name, which is horrible.
Harold Ramis with Dan Aykroyd.
No.
I know who he's talked about.
Yeah, she knows who I'm talking about, and she's not going to help me.
Sorry,
And I
Ernie
appreciate
Hudson.
that. Ernie
Ernie
Hudson.
Hudson.
When he comes in, I like him a lot too. But the first half of this movie is mainly just these three guys, and their dynamic as a team is really great. Like, I love the way they interact with one another. And Bill Murray coming in and immediately messing with Aegon, making noises on the table as he's like
slams
listening.
the book on the stethoscope.
That's all great.
It's like the definition of why are we friends, and then you just because it works.
Yeah, we just enjoy it. I love, again, the way Egon's characterization is he's the uber nerd, and so that's great. Obviously we have Bill Murray is kind of the playboy who you're not really sure why he's even in this field. Except that probably his friends were, and he decided, there's no accountability, right? I can do whatever I want. And
it's like, if that chick would dig it, that's probably part of it.
And then of course you have, Dan Aykroyd kind of doing, he's the nerdy guy, but he's also, he's got a little bit
HR department, right?
Yeah, he's got a little bit of that social awkwardness and all that stuff. And again, it all works. I love the scene where they, encounter the ghost in the basement, and like they keep trying to like go talk to her, and Bill Murray's like, excuse me, ma'am, like all this stuff. And it's like, that's all good comedy. And first off, this woman's just trying to enjoy she's trying to catch up on reading. She couldn't get done while she was alive. And so, now they're bothering her. Like, people that are alive that are reading don't like being bothered. Now you got a ghost that's reading. Like, leave me alone. I already died. I just want to read my book. So I appreciate, like, that's a funny setup. And then, again, the end of just like, get her. Bill Murray just giving Dan Aykroyd crap. Like, that was your plan? Get her? Like, get the ghost? Like, I enjoyed a lot of that scene in particular. I was having a lot of fun with it.
One part that I do love is while Venkman's asking him asking the lady the questions, like about her past and things like that. She and he's the last question he asks is like, ma'am, are you menstruating? And the library director's like, why does that even matter? And like, very serious, he turns, he's like, back off, man, I'm a scientist.
Which again just speaks to like his attitude,
right?
And, like, this is who his character is. Like, he's gonna BS his way through everything, and he's gonna push the envelope wherever he can. And I mean, like, again, it's very consistent with who he is.
Right.
So, sorry.
No, go ahead, Crystal.
So I was going to say, like, so we were talking about Vickman's character, and I want to talk about how we would talk about Egon now, right? Because back then he was just like a super nerdy guy, right? But if you look at him in the spectrum of a day, he's definitely on the spectrum, right? He's autistic. And like, that's the way it was coded then before it became popular, like a popular, I hate to say the way popular diagnosis, but before they started really diagnosing people with that, because it's like the hyperfixations there, the just like the lack of social skills.
It was one of my favorite running gags, how clearly into him the secretary is and how completely oblivious he is.
Failed romance, as we like to call
asexual, yeah.
She's just I mean, she's just dropping so many hints, and he's like
Oh,
not responding to any of them. Like he has no clue
She's-
that there are
but
hints to be
science-
dropped. Like he's just
science
like,
happening.
yeah, no, it's great.
Right, because at one point she's asking him, says, it's like, what are your hobbies? What do you like to do for fun? And it's almost like he looks up and almost kind of like realizes what's going on and kind of shuts it down by saying, he's like,
What does
like,
he collect?
I like to study or collect spores, fungus, and the I forgot the third item. I have it written down somewhere,
Yeah,
but
whatever it is. But, yeah.
basically saying I enjoy things that no woman's really
It was
going to enjoy at
like
all.
mold, spores, and fungus, or something like
Yes,
that.
mold,
Yeah.
spores, and funguses. So, but yeah, there's this whole theme going on through the whole movie where it's like a failed romance where she's trying, she's like, because there's that one part where she's like, oh, you're such a humanitarian, when she's like getting Rick Moranis. He's like, I don't think he's human.
He's just, like, once again, he gets nothing. And I think she's clearly only still working there because she wants to be in a relationship with Egon. Like, she's treated poorly. She doesn't like her job. She's not paid enough. And the only reason she stays there.
Paid enough.
Right. The only reason she's staying there is because she wants to be in a relationship with Egon, and he is oblivious. He has no clue.
Right, because at
Right.
one point when she's complaining about her job, Venkman's like, there's plenty of high-paying jobs in the food industry. And that's when she picks up, the phone's ringing. He's like, you answer the phone, and she picks it up. She's like, Ghostbusters, what do you want?
Good
I wonder
stuff.
what high paying was back then, now that I'm thinking about it.
Let's not go back in time.
Talk
No.
about not aging well.
Reaganomics, all right.
Hey, it's gonna trickle down.
Oh yeah.
Eventually,
It'll get to us someday, guys. I
just
promise.
like the goo from the top of the hotel building, it'll get down to the bottom eventually. Right?
So
One
one thing, one note I have here is Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis, this opening section of the movie is what they really added to it, like how the Ghostbusters started, because how Dan Aykroyd's original script was, even though it was in the future and it was supposed to be kind of more campier, but it was supposed to just get right into the point where they're ghostbusting from the get-go.
Mhm.
And Harold Ramis and Reitman decided they wanted to give the intro a little bit more about what when they got in there. And I remember, I think it was Robert was asking earlier about, like, why is Venkman here? Why is he in this field or something along those lines? And I believe in Dan Aykroyd and him are having this discussion about after they get kicked out of school. So the board of regents or whatever decided they were done with them. And there was a funny clip in the deleted scenes there where Venkman goes to the dean. He's like, this is what they did to Galileo. And,
God.
and then
The misunderstood genius.
yeah, and the what do the dean say? Responded back with, I forgot what guy. There was another scientist. He goes, well, they impaled so and so. So, yeah. But yes, so they get kicked out of the school, and Dan Aykroyd and Peter or Venkman, or I'm going back and forth with the names, but they're talking about what they're gonna do. And Dan Aykroyd says, he goes, I love the education system. He goes, you don't have to produce results.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, he goes, I've been in the private sector. You have to produce the results.
They expect results.
They expect results.
Mhm.
So I think that kind of goes to the point why Venkman too is also in the education system there.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right.
So
I think it fits perfectly with his character. I just want to skim by. I don't care.
yeah, I'm getting
For
paid.
sure.
Right.
I'm torturing students for $5 a piece. So
Sure.
And I get to meet cute blondes. Yeah, you know.
so then transitions to where they come up with their idea for paranormal extermination and hunting. And what's Dan Aykroyd's character's name? I'm spacing on right now. Egon
my father,
Venkman.
Egon
Stents, yes.
Stents, yeah.
Dan Aykroyd's character basically takes out like another mortgage or something along those lines.
Third mortgage.
Third mortgage on his family. This is the 80s. So like we think interest rates are high right now. Like interest rates back in the 80s were ridiculous then.
19%, I think, is what they say in the movie.
Comment, yeah.
That's why
that was like the 80s, the early 80s were sorry.
No, like because you notice like Egon, as they're sitting there talking, has got this like mini calculator and he's like pressing buttons. And he's like, over the course of like 10 years, you're gonna shell out $95,000 in interest alone on this loan. So they do and so they go to the firehouse. The exterior is the firehouse, the famous one that you see in New York, that's always very popular. My screen's jacking up. There we go. Sorry, I was gonna try to show a clip of it, but everybody's seen it before, right?
Yeah.
And when you go in the interior, they're inside of a firehouse in LA. And that one was also built in 1912, the same as the firehouse in New York.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I didn't know.
So great timing there. So
what I like about these two scenes is Aykroyd gives Bill Murray crap for not negotiating with the loan officer when he's like renegotiating his mortgage loan. Yeah. But then he completely undercuts like them getting a deal on this firehouse because they're trying to like negotiate with the realtor, talking about all the terrible things. And he's like, this is great. Let's move in today. And so I just, again, like it was just a nice little bit of like, he's blissfully unaware of that he's doing the exact same thing he was just accusing Bill Murray. So I liked that kind of dichotomy.
Egon ends with, he goes, the neighborhood area is a demilitarized zone. And Bill Murray's just like, this is not good. And then you see Ray, there's his damn name. Ray looks down from the top. He's like, does fire pole still work? Without checking to see if the fire pole still works. Just jumps on that sucker and rolls down.
And to be honest, if any of them should not have done it, should not have been him.
Right.
It was not the best idea.
So after this is where we're introduced to Sigourney Weaver.
Right.
Gorgeous ladies, always been gorgeous, but I think she was really radiant in this movie. And she was actually wanting to do something that had comedy involved with it, because up to this, she, had some really good hits, but they were all serious. And she wanted to do something a little bit lighter to kind of show her, what's the word? The breadth, whatever. Range. Yeah. Damn words. I need to.
We got you.
Yeah. To show her range. So, so you see her coming into her apartment with groceries. Oh, and before that, we're also introduced to Rick Moranis.
Right.
Now, did you guys know about John Candy and Rick Moranis?
They are they're both good actors.
They're both Canadians. I know that.
That's about all I got.
All right. So originally, I think it was Dan Aykroyd had written that part that Rick Moranis is doing, the accountant in the other apartment, for John Candy. He had that entire role written for John Candy.
And that's so weird.
Well, and he's pitching it to John Candy, and John Candy's asking these questions and just like getting like more and more confused about it, and just didn't understand the role at all, and just passed on it. So, and then apparently Rick Moranis came in and not only shined with what they wrote in, but added a ton of other good stuff to their role. So
I definitely could not see John Candy in that role at all.
I can't either.
His type of comedy is not nerdy accountant. Like that doesn't. So it would have had to be a very different
uncle comedy. He's total uncle. That's why Uncle Buck worked so well, because that part was written for him.
Yeah, he could be the neighbor that wants to get with like that portion of the character could work, but every other aspect of it.
I mean, you need a nerdy weirdo. Rick Moranis is your dude.
Well, I think the close. Go ahead.
Because then look at he played that role in Ghostbusters, right? And then he played like a similar role, but just a little. No, wait, hold on. You know what? Scratch that. I just confused him with somebody else.
There we go. All Canadians look the same, right?
No, it wasn't even a Canadian. That's the bad part.
What I was gonna say was the closest I think to like John Candy getting any kind of nerdy aspect was with him being a writer in Delirious. I think that was the movie. It was Delirious, where he's the soap opera writer that gets sucked into his own stories.
I was like, the weirdest thing I ever saw was the polka band and Home Alone.
Right. So, but yeah,
sold 183 copies. It's a big hit.
Yeah. So Sigourney Weaver comes back to her apartment. She's got groceries, and there's a little Easter egg in there. One of the groceries she pulls out is a bag of marshmallows, and you know what brand it is?
Is it Stay Puft?
Stay Puft marshmallows. So a little bit of foreshadowing there.
Yeah.
And then her egg, like very, very weird things start happening. The eggs on her counter start cooking. And those were more practical effects. Apparently, they had to work really hard to figure out how to make that surface hot enough to cook the eggs, but not cook anybody's hands, or Sigourney Weaver. So I think they did a really good job there, making it look realistic.
Oh, yeah, they really did. That was a nice little scene, I thought.
Yeah. And then
we're building a case for this, Oscar. We're building a case.
And there were some great practical effects. And again, like we said, it was 1984. Like, it was before Batman, right? So before, yeah. So I mean, we're looking at bare minimum, like apple crates, man. They're doing their best,
right?
Feel good.
And then we realize something's going on with their fridge. And she opens it, and she sees what she claims is a weird dog and a weird, platform and whatnot. One of the notes that I got from the from Ivan Reitman and Harold Ramis was during their first screening that the fridge in special effects was not done already. So they had this build up. She opens the fridge at the first screening, and it transitions to a thing that says fridge not ready. So, and they said that the audience had this weird reaction where they were kind of partially scared and partially let down, because they were like expecting to see something scary, and then they're like, total letdown that they don't see what's trying to crawl out of her fridge. So, and then she runs out of her apartment, I think, and then we transition and where we first meet Annie Potts, who delivers such a great deadpan delivery on most of her stuff as Janine.
Yeah.
And she really, and I don't think she was really known by this point, so she was still relatively unknown by the time she did this role.
I'm trying to think because the thing that I know her most from, and maybe this is again showing my age, she was on Designing Women.
Right.
And that was the first like really big thing that I remember her from. And I can't remember if that was before or during, but I can tell you like this, she didn't play a role like this anywhere else.
Yeah. And she's great. I mean, there aren't a lot of female roles in this movie. Really her and Sigourney Weaver are kind of the only two that have anything to do, really. I mean, there's a few others that pop in for a few moments or a scene, but she is great, and she gives as good as she gets. I love, again, we talked about it a little bit earlier, but the way she goes back and forth with Venkman about her job is a lot of fun. Again, her kind of wanting to be with Egon is a lot of fun. So I really enjoy her in this role, and definitely felt like she was one of the standouts outside of the main cast. She was one of the ones that really kind of jumped off the screen and was like, yeah, this is a great kind of supporting character that really is what makes this movie stand out, in a lot of positive ways.
Right.
Yeah, because definitely when I think about the firehouse, she's honestly like the first person that comes to mind. I see her answering the phone.
Yeah.
So.
And she answers the door. So, like for various people. And then also you get the surprise of Egon being under the desk.
Yes. Oh, I think we might have lost your audio, Keith. Or did everyone lose me?
No, I hear you. I can't hear Keith.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
We're live. Let's see. Nope, still
How about
nothing.
now?
Oh, there he is.
Yay,
Okay.
there we go.
Driver issue, I guess. Let's hope that doesn't continue. And this is where that line is delivered where she's trying to, start off that failed romance.
Yeah.
She asks him, do you have any hobbies? And he's like, I collect mold, spores, and funguses.
Yeah.
And this is also where Sigourney Weaver comes in and is first introduced to Peter Venkman. And immediately I feel like the chemistry between the two of them kicks off. It stays through the whole movie. One thing I do notice, and then they said in the notes, is Bill Murray comes running out from that back area with his office and hops over the gate, the wooden gate. If you notice, he almost eats it, like in real life. He if you hear like a little bit of like a clip, and it's basically like a click or a bump sound, it's his foot clipping the very top of that wooden gate. And apparently he almost completely ate it. Like if his foot had caught fully on that, it would have been like Bill Murray face first into the ground in front of Sigourney Weaver. So if you watch it again and you get to that part, you'll notice like, oh yeah, he almost did eat it. So
now I want to watch it just for that.
Yeah. So but yeah, before and then this is where they move into her apartment, and his his love language immediately comes out to her and throws her off.
Is that what we're gonna call it?
Love language.
Love language.
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
I mean, he's very clearly he's got an objective, and figuring out what's going on with her apartment is not the objective, right? If he happens to do that, great. But that's not why he's there.
Well, let's
be honest.
There's so much great dialogue in that, and you can see he's kind of showboating too. Like he's playing with the piano keys, and he's like,
"They hate this."
They hate that. He's like, "Hey, it's Peter Venkman," Yeah. And he's playing with the tool and pumping it, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "It's very technical."
I think Aaron and I were watching this together, and I think my comment that I made is because of Sigourney Weaver's reaction to everything that's going on. Right. It's like he's treating her like she's a co-ed, and she's not. Like none of this is working on her because she's not a co-ed. And that, I think, again, we talked about it earlier, but that's the part that frustrates me, is because at this point, when this isn't working, I want him to change his approach the next time they talk. Like I want him to be a player that has multiple avenues and multiple ways that he can try and get in, but he keeps on doing the same shtick. Like he's still treating her the same way in every other scene as he is. And that's the part that frustrated me or disappointed me, is to go like, I wanted him to like realize, hey, this isn't working. I need to change my game up. And then maybe that would have, caught her attraction. So again, that's just a critique. It's just how I feel about watching it, where, I liked this establishing scene. I like them meeting. I like all of that stuff. I love the way that she reacts to him, where it's like, this is not working. No, thank you. Go away, and all of that stuff. And I think I was waiting for him to kind of change his approach a little bit. And the fact that it doesn't happen, it feels like a missed opportunity.
Right. Yeah. And so like there's other two quotes that I love in that. And he's like a lot of space in here. You're alone, right? And he's like, yes. He's like, good.
Good. Yeah, and the bedroom line is my favorite, when when she says like there's nothing happens in there, or whatever she says.
She's like, that's the bedroom. But nothing ever happened in there. And then you hear him like quietly, but still loud enough for her to hear. He's like, oh, that's a crime.
Yeah.
You could just see her face. She's like,
right. She's like, this guy.
yeah.
Yes.
And so then they go to her kitchen, and he's kind of like, you start seeing that he's kind of getting into the boat where he kind of believes her. Like, he not only because he's looking at the eggs and he's like kind of like, these actually cooked. He's like, this is legit. Like,
special guest appearance by Crystal's cat.
there you go.
Right.
Her name is Bear.
Yeah. Hi, Bear. And and then he does that jerk move where he opens the fridge and he's like, look at all this junk food. And she's like, come on, there was something in there. And then he makes that decision where he's like, if this was not a gorgeous woman that he was trying to pursue, he probably wouldn't have said. He's like, I really do believe you. Like he had to like commit and double down if anything was going to go somewhere here, is what I kind of feel like.
Oh yeah, 100%.
And then she kicks him out, and he does his best to playfully like keep Papa's head back in the door and be cute and all that. So that's where we're at.
I think Crystal and I are having the same reaction.
I'm sorry. I would have closed the door on his face.
She tried to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if his head gets caught in between, like that's his fault.
Yeah, and that's on him. I hope he has health insurance.
I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and the moment when she like slams the door on Robert Downey Jr.'s hand and cuts off his pinky, and you're like, well, your pinky shouldn't have been there. Shouldn't have been. I'm just saying. So Bill Murray shouldn't have been there. Oh, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang is one of the best movies ever. We could do that on one of these reviews, and yes, it's still good.
Yeah, so the next scene, they're back at the firehouse. They're upstairs. They're kind of like in their under uniform, sitting there eating Chinese food. And Bill Murray's like, "You guys, we gotta keep this client. I need some petty cash. Take her out for a date." And Dan Aykroyd's like, "We're eating the petty cash, the last of the petty cash."
It's fabulous me.
And Venkman's like, "Slow it down." Like,
right.
And
you're moving through that too fast.
Yeah. And so one little Easter egg or kind of note that I see is in that scene up there. Like, they just got talking about how broke they are, and as they're running out to go on to respond to their first case, you see about 3 or 4 arcade games on the wall in the back. And I'm like, it's just like, you guys were broken, but you like, this is why you're broke. You spent
they're
priorities, obviously.
Exactly.
I mean, they're gonna have a lot of downtime at the firehouse. They gotta have something to keep their minds active and engaged.
Right.
And
I mean, just like
it's a business expense.
Modernize it, right? It'd be like Wi-Fi and Netflix.
Right.
You're like, this, I need this.
Yeah.
And speaking of the expenses, when Ray pulls up with that ambulance / I think it's supposed to be an ambulance.
It wasn't. Yeah, was it an ambulance?
Old school.
It's got the siren.
It looks like a hearse, but yes.
Right. But he pulls up.
Ecto 1.
Right. And Venkman's like, well, what did it cost? And then he's like, oh, about 4,800, this and that. And you see Bill Murray's face, like he subtly, blood, drops out of his,
I think it was actually, it made me laugh. It was a nice reversal of the Blues Brothers scene where he's talking about, he got the car with all the cop tires and the cop,
right.
Cop transmission, cop engine, all this stuff, like all the great stuff that is in the Bluesmobile. And this car is just all
needs
crap.
all the work.
Everything. And so I appreciate it. I was like, I wonder if that was a Dan Aykroyd, because Blues Brothers was 3 or 4 years before this. Was that something that he kind of threw in there? I don't know, but I liked that. It made me think of it for sure.
Right.
Well, it's like a reversal of character between Elwood and Ray, right?
Oh,
Elwood's very confident. He knows exactly what's happening. He is mostly serious. And then you come to Ray is just happy-go-lucky. Yeah. Naive is a word that comes to mind. Elwood's worldly. Ray, not so much.
And that's the thing is Ray has no clue that Bill Murray was taking advantage of those co-eds. at the beginning. There was like, he is his partner.
Oh, yeah.
He's in the lab with him, and he has no idea that is the type of science that Bill Murray was doing.
He's like, when Ray comes in, he's like, we gotta go. He's like, I need you to go, and like swats him behind
I
his
need
head.
a little bit more time with the subject.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Gonna need another hour or so.
Like, yeah, but we've already have the data. Let's move on. That's true science.
Right. Yeah.
And then Janine takes their call, you know, and she's like, oh, you actually wanted to come out? And one of the best foreshadowings I have there, she's like, oh yeah, they'll be totally discreet.
So, as they're driving down the street with sirens blaring, and,
right?
Yeah, of course.
And you know, then she does that whole "we got one," you know, and with them driving around the streets in New York, I remember they're reading now that or hearing the directors how they were saying they were just hauling ass all around New York, you know, and some of this was like improv, like they didn't have the streets, you know, cordoned off, like they were using the real New York, and people they would pull up
It was
somewhere,
the 80s, man.
and people
Right?
would be like, what are you guys doing? They're like, we're Ghostbusters. Wouldn't you explain anything about film and movie? They were just like, we're
course not.
Ghostbusters. They're just adding some mystery to this, and people are like, so I can only imagine those people like, it's the Ghostbusters. They're driving around. I'm like, oh, I guess we'll have to watch that.
Right, it is New York. You don't think they even batted an eye.
Right.
I don't know.
I used to have a guy, like, obviously in the 90s, but some guy used to sing guitar with a cowboy hat and underwear, and that's all he had on.
Well, I mean, you talk about like New Yorkers, right? And it makes me think of that scene later where Rick Moranis is being chased by the dog and he's like pounding on the windows and everything, like, let me in. And like, then nobody else could see the dog. They see him like collapse and everyone just goes back to their meal. It's like, oh, it's just another crazy person in New York.
Yeah.
Well, I also think
Right.
that was like some social commentary there, because it was the
For sure.
the rich not caring about somebody outside having a bad day. They're like, don't
It is
bother them.
also like the drug.
The
It was
rich
drug
don't care
relevant,
about
too.
us?
What's that, Robert?
The rich don't care about us? Is that-
Yeah.
Wait,
No,
are
the
you
trickle
sure?
down
Of course
economics
they
will kick
do.
in.
You care
Yeah.
about all the cogs, all of
Yeah.
them.
Every
How
single
cool
one that
is
gets
that?
crushed
Yeah.
underneath the weight.
So
Well, cogs are replaceable.
Oh, now are we doing Snowpiercer? We're just gonna get a little child to be the
Oh God.
tangent,
That movie's so
alert.
weird. Sorry.
One movie at a time, gentlemen.
Ecto 1, yeah. So the
Can't do it.
discreetness
Sorry.
pulls up with this loud ambulance with all this gear on it, and then as soon as they slam the doors open, Bill Murray's like, "Someone call about a ghost."
Very discreet. Once again.
Oh yeah.
And
As he's checking out the girl that's walking out.
yeah, and
I mean,
Yeah.
when I think discreet, I think Bill Murray.
Yeah.
Well, and it's the scene we're gonna get to, Keith. The elevator scene might be the best scene in the whole movie for me. Like, just as they're talking about their equipment, it's untested. We've got atomic proton packs on our back, whatever, like switch me on, and it's just I'm gonna move over. Like,
Right.
just all of the comedy in that scene is working from the moment they arrive at the elevator with the other guy. Like, who are you? We're exterminators. You know, I'll get the next one. You know, like, just all.
He's like,
of it
I'm just
is
gonna wait.
working for me. I thought that scene to me is the movie in a nutshell. Like, this is what it's all about, and I really love that scene.
The comedy in this movie is like still to me is top. It's
Right.
great comedy, great line. Like, it just, do all the jokes still land? No, but the ones that do land hard and they're good. They're just well written.
I think their whole thing in the hotel part was supposed to be like an homage to the Marx Brothers, especially when they get to the
absolutely.
dining room. But one of my other favorite lines was in the elevator, and they're talking about like they're finally like hitting reality, like, oh, maybe we should have tested this equipment. And Venkman's like, why worry? Each one of us is carrying an unlicensed nuclear accelerator on our back.
I mean, again, it's all working in that moment, and yeah, they get off, and shoot at the poor
Slimer?
lady.
Right.
No,
Slimer.
they don't shoot at Slimer first. They shoot at the poor
the
lady,
lady.
doing cleaning
The
the,
maid.
hotel room.
Oh Jesus Christ! I forgot about that.
Immediate wonton damage. Toilet paper exploding and flying everywhere, and she's scared. You know what's funny is like she almost comes off as annoyed, as like, "What are you doing?" And she's like looking at him. And me, I personally like,
who's going to have to clean that up? Obviously, somebody has to.
Yeah,
They
no,
just made her job. They shot at her and they made her job harder.
and like some of the toilet paper, or whatever, is on fire in the ground. She's taking spray, trying to put the fire out. So,
she is way more angry at them than she is scared of them. Like
Right.
in the moment, she's scared, as they're shooting at her, but then she's just like, "What? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you doing this?"
I guess it's one of those. It's New York. We've seen everything, kind of.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
So, and then
I don't get paid enough to deal with this. That's
Right.
exactly it.
So before we go too far forward, that one part where they're walking in the hall and it's panned out, and Harold Ramis is on the far left, and they mentioned how when this was formatted for TV, you never see him; he's always cut off. And so I remember we talking about that before.
yeah.
I remember him saying that he's like, you never see me when I'm on TV when they formatted this for us.
That's funny.
So, and also they were kind of like kidding around. They're like, we think, the first time they see us in uniform, we come blasting through these doors. We wanted to present it in a way where people might applaud for us seeing in full gear and uniform. He goes, and in some theaters, people actually did, which is like, we were like surprised and blown away.
Yeah.
So
That's interesting.
let's see here. Why worry? Nuclear reactor, media wants out. And then, so this is also where we first see Slimer. And I believe they said that as they referred to him in some of the commentary, Dan Aykroyd, one of the main writers, this was supposed to be a nod to an homage to John Belushi, in his gluttonous ways of how he would, if he was a ghost, an inanimate ghost, this is kind of what he would, like thinking of Animal House with the food fight and the whole like, what am I kind of thing.
Okay.
So
Yeah, now that you say that, it totally colors it differently, and it totally makes sense, like 100%.
so he's a little more lovable, right?
I mean, no.
No.
I'm one of those that most of the time the characters that John Belushi played were just annoying to me.
How dare you?
I know. I'm sorry. Awful.
I mean, outside of Blues Brothers, where I love Jake, but Jake's the worst.
Yes.
And outside of that, I'm not the biggest Belushi fan. I'll be honest. So
yeah, it's just
he's
like
talented, but he's not my guy.
Yes, I definitely appreciated more Belushi on SNL, like watching like old SNL with him, but like in his movies, they always played him like this one note party animal most of the time.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that I feel like it kind of contributed to what happened to him, right? Like he's like, oh, people love it when I'm like this.
Right.
So he kept doing it even off screen.
Well,
Sorry to put a damper on this.
well, we could go another video about, his tortured soul and why he was like that, but similar like Chris Farley.
Yes.
So, and this is also like one of the few times in the movie you actually see Peter Venkman freaked out. Like he's like visually disturbed. He's got the radio, and he's like, it's staring right at me. And then when the thing starts running at him, you actually see him get scared and freak out. And it's like one of the few times in the movie you see him scared.
Right.
And I love Ray's reaction. It's like, it's not going to hurt you. It's fine. And then he comes up on him covered in goo. And he's like, you made contact with a,
awesome.
Right. Like,
he's all
like,
happy.
This is incredible. And Venkman's like, I'm covered in slime.
Help
and that
me.
was gross.
Right.
Like, it wasn't awesome.
And then so from here we fast forward to the epitome of a Marx Brothers scene in the dining room, where they again tried their hardest to use, and they actually used the dining room from that what was it, the Biltmore Hotel, I think it was. I probably butchered the name, but it was actually that hotel and that dining room.
Nice.
The chandelier was from the movie that they wrecked. And this is where we're first introduced to one of the most famous quotes of all time: "Don't cross the streams."
Well, I gotta back up just a little bit because I don't know. You watched the commentary track. I did not. Did they talk about when Bill Murray pulls the tablecloth off? Because that to me feels like a total ad lib. Like that feels like that was not in the script.
See that?
And Bill Murray just did it. And then you could tell it's an ADR line afterwards. The flowers are still standing, like because that's off screen. Like clearly that was like, hey, he actually did it. And there's like, we need to put the button on the joke. But I do love that moment.
And meanwhile, they're supposed to be clearing space and being serious about this, and be careful with the dining room. And
they're just throwing it.
Not only are they just tossing the tables, he's like getting distracted and doing the old tablecloth pull. So yes. So yeah, and then like I said, we introduce the cross streams, and then they go into that. Egon goes into that really, like basically all the moleculars, everything in your body is going to explode at the same time.
I love that at first it's bad. And then Bakeman's like, I'm not clear on the whole good bad thing. Can you explain that to me?
Yes.
Is this is "Don't cross the streams"? Is that like the Chekhov's gun trope where they introduce that line and then they end up doing it?
Yeah,
kind of thing. Like that self-fulfilling prophecy that is.
Was
I mean, it's probably not exactly Chekhov, but it's
you see that in so many movies. It's a trope. Like I just watched Iron Man 2.
Like, don't do this, and then that's what they have to do.
Right.
I can think of so many. Like, I mean, you have to fall asleep to fight Freddy, right? That's one Halloween related one that I can think of. They tell you not to, but you got to.
Yeah, and I was just watching Iron Man 2. So when they're fighting and they do that thing where they blow up Tony's house, and then at the end to get to fight what's his name, Vanko, he's like, hey, remember that thing? He's like, I thought we said we shouldn't do it. Just do it, So very classic
very much
thing.
Well, and I do love the other one that is not a cross the streams moment. This is not a let's set this up for later. This is a random joke that I'm not even sure gets paid off, but I still think it's funny, is when I think it's Ray says don't look in the trap, and then Egon just immediately is like, I looked in the trap, Ray. And then they never address it. Like they never address it. He just goes, I looked in the trap, Ray, and then it doesn't come up again. And you're like, nope. Why should he have not looked in the trap? Are there any consequences for him looking in the trap? We don't address it. It doesn't matter. We're moving on. And it's like one of those things where it's like that felt like maybe it was supposed to be later on there was going to be something with the trap, but there never is. And I don't know. It's another moment that just made me laugh because I'm like, Egon's just immediately, I looked in the trap, Ray. That's what happened.
What I like about this scene is you're so before that you're introduced to the particle accelerators in the hand or whatever, proton pack. And then you got this like, what the hell is that little box thing that they're doing there? And then you watch it, you're like, oh, they're like, what is going on? He's sucking it into the thing, and then movie practical effects. They had a flash bulb inside there to give it that nice light flash.
Yeah.
So, and then
I gotta give it up to the Foley artists in this movie too, right? Like, who can think is like, all right, so what is this supposed to sound like? Like something like the trap and the proton packs. They're like, I don't know what to do. Just like, does that work?
I'd be interested to see what the sound effect guys were doing there.
Yeah,
I'm kind of curious too.
Right, it's just like, because you see him use just some of the craziest of things to just make the most mundane sounds.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we get one of my other favorite quotes. Peter Venkman coming out with the smoking trap. He's like, we came, we saw, we kicked its ass. you know.
Yeah.
And then one of the few times his schmoozy, slime ball personality actually pays off. He's like, well, that's gonna have to be
Egon there, like
it's $4,000, and then it's another 1,000 for whatever, and the guy's like, I'm not gonna pay. Oh, we'll just put it back.
We'll just
put
it back.
Sure. Yeah, no, that's a great moment, and I gotta say, up to this point, we talked about me not having nostalgia glasses. Up to this point, I am totally enjoying this movie. I'm loving it and I'm laughing. And this is the point where it really starts to get uneven for me. So as we get on, I might start having a little bit more critiques and things that I didn't like as much. But
I was about to say, you sounded like you were enjoying it so far.
Up to this point in the movie, I was having a blast. I was really enjoying this movie. And even more so, probably
much funner.
And I will say even more so than the first time I watched it, because I think that time I was watching it with very high expectations, just because of all the things that came through this movie. And so that time it was kind of like, is it really worthy of being called one of the greatest comedies of all time? It didn't really feel that way. Watching it this second time, I didn't have those same expectations. I was coming at it with like, it was pretty good, it was fine, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it more with kind of that mentality going into it. So I had a better time with it on the second watch than I did the first. And definitely this first half of the movie, I was having a ball. And I feel like, again, it just gets a little uneven from this point forward.
So you telling me you don't like glorious montages that have Ray Parker Jr. playing the Ghostbusters song? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not saying I don't like them. I'm saying they're extremely 80s.
I don't think Buxton makes him feel good.
Because that's what comes next is the glorious montage, and other than the 2 seconds.
That's an 80s trope. You had to have at least minimum in 80 movies, one montage, at least one. It's just those are laws.
I mean, at least one, and for good measure, you should probably have 3.
Right, just for
Absolutely.
fun.
I mean, it's just like we didn't write the rules in the 80s. The 80s wrote the rules for us. I mean, you saw what we were wearing. Nobody wanted to do that.
So during the montage, they're doing the different reporters, and one reporter is on the street, talking, and then you see a guy, like the bearded guy that's in all denim behind him, just kind of like this. They said that he was not actually an extra. He was just a dude on the street that just wanted to like get into on the camera being goofy.
I kind of figured that too. I was like, he's just okay. They're not going to talk about that.
100 guy on the street vibes.
And then there's one point where they're like jogging in front of the Rockefeller Center. And there was a reason they were jogging in front of the Rockefeller Center. You were not actually allowed to film where they were filming right there. So they were trying to get in and out. And I think they said that if you look closely, you might see somebody's trying to chase them off in the movie, because you're not actually supposed to be filming there. So
I didn't know that.
They're the Ghostbusters. That's what they're gonna do.
Oh yeah, the Rockefeller Center. They don't play around there.
And we hear Casey Kasem talking. I only bring him up because there's another aspect about Casey Kasem later in the movie. Dan Aykroyd's like pretty much the only real like not really explicit, but like sex scene or kind of sexual activity is him with the ghost, and while he's in bed.
The dream sequence, yep.
Yeah, dream sequence, whether it was a dream or not, but
no.
So montage finish.
We talk about uneven things and things that do and don't work for me. That scene. Not
and that is one thing that does not age well, right? The ghost spectral sex is just a little.
I mean, it was consensual, wasn't it? I mean,
right?
He was cool with it.
And how much can a ghost consent?
I mean, the ghost was
engaging. She
aggressor.
She started.
So I don't think there's an issue of consent. I don't think there's an issue of consent there as much as just like to me, it's like I don't know why this scene is in the movie. Like I honestly what is it serving other than just to have a weird
a joke in there? Yeah.
What was the rating of this movie?
This is before PG-13 existed.
I was about to say, PG. This is PG.
Absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
The PG-13 didn't exist until a couple years later.
So, all right. I think it was, Robert didn't like it. I can kind of see where that is. I thought it was kind of funny, especially with the special effects of the belt coming off. Whatever.
Is that so? Hold on. Is that what they're parodying in Scary Movie?
Maybe
That's got to be part of it. I know part of it's What Lies Beneath, but I feel like part of it has to be Ghostbusters. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not the Scary Movie guy, so
I'd have to
yeah,
watch
I'm
it
not put on
again.
that one.
Well,
It's
it's
been a
not a
minute.
single one. Surprise, Robert, it's a parody.
No. I know about. I mean, like, I didn't watch that movie because I wouldn't have gotten 90% of the references. I don't watch horror movies, and so there was no reason for me to watch Scary Movie.
I can't say that I'm actually a horror movie fan. It was just forced on me. So here we are. I get all the references because I had to watch it.
You mentioned Freddy Krueger earlier, and I'm like, I know who that is. I've never seen Nightmare on Elm Street. I've never seen any of them.
You'll have to watch it.
I don't, though. That's the thing. I don't have to watch it.
That's where Robert and I kind of fall in the same category.
My thing about those 80s horror movies, though, is the fact that you look at them now and they are 80s comedies. If you through time, you can just see it. And plus, like Freddy, especially after the first movie, it was just all just total cheese.
Right. It was gratuitous teen sex, killing.
Sex and dad jokes to the extreme.
All right. I'm going to throw a tangent alert. Okay. That's going to be my new thing. Tangent alert. So montage finishes, and this is where you see Janine reading off all these different requirements. Do you believe in paranormal activity, this and this and that, and some other goofy things to Ernie Hudson. And Ernie Hudson, he goes, if there's a steady paycheck, I'll believe anything.
Yes. I love Ernie Hudson in this one.
Yes.
He's so good.
And that's why they wanted him was, the other three, even though Venkman's a total goofball, but he can still get most of their technical stuff. So like Ernie Hudson comes in to kind of explain the craziness,
He's just so charming. He just oozes charm.
Well, and at least the rumor, and I don't know if it's ever been substantiated, but it was always presented to me like it was supposed to be Eddie Murphy and it was a larger role, and then when he backed out of it, they shrunk the role down, and it ended up going to now I'm blanking on the name once again, Ernie Hudson.
Right, because he didn't get a lot of speaking in the movie.
Yeah, and I think honestly, I think this is absolutely one of those, like, it's the shark didn't work in Jaws, and so then we had to not show the shark, right, and that makes the movie better. Having Ernie Hudson instead of Eddie Murphy, having it be this role instead of another comedian, this is the absolute right move for this movie. Ernie Hudson is perfect in this movie, and the way he interacts with the other three is it could not be Eddie Murphy. It needed to be Ernie Hudson.
Straight man.
I agree,
right? And that's what Ernie Hudson provides, because like he is a great straight man, and he's like sociable without being a douchebag like Beckman is. Well,
and the thing is too, Ernie Hudson is the audience. We don't know any of his stuff, and Ernie Hudson plays the audience at this point.
Right.
And I think that's what fits with him.
Well, right. And there's so many moments of him where it's clear that he's playing a black guy in the 80s. Like there are racial undertones to a lot of his scenes that he's doing very much on purpose, and thinking about like being involved in this type of thing, and where he needs to not be aggressive and he needs to be more like all of those things are so prevalent, but it's also subtle enough that if you're not looking for it, like it's not going to hit you over the head, but it's also very much like I was really picking up on it watching it, and I'm going like, man, Ernie Hudson is nailing this role, and it was I was really enjoying him.
Talk about something that's not going to hold up, especially nowadays. Remember how much smoking is in that movie?
I have a note there. Yeah, there's so much smoking, and then you go to the second movie, there's no smoking.
smoking. Yeah, because they're like, oh, well, we found out this is bad for you.
Well, isn't there, or maybe it's just TV, isn't there a thing that they can't do it anymore?
Yeah, no, there was a point in time, and I think it happened like at the beginning. I feel like it was the early 90s. They're like,
It's
yeah,
probably
you
with
can't
the
advertise
tobacco
cigarettes
litigation.
or alcohol. And they
Well-
were like, you can advertise alcohol, but it has to be like after 7.
And part of that was that PG-13 rating also.
Mhm.
So
Oh, 'cause it
once
came
that
out by then.
once that got put in, then PG movies, it was like, oh, you can't have cigarettes in PG movies anymore. It was like if it was PG-13 or up, okay, but below that, and so like once that in the mid 80s with it was Temple of Doom and Gremlins were the movies that pushed it over the edge because those are PG movies, and
Mhm.
they pushed it over the edge, and
Wow.
they created PG-13, and that's kind of the moment where we start to get a lot more of that kind of delineation and censorship in these movies.
Okay.
So, yeah,
That's
it's crazy.
that's just crazy. Yeah, just think
And
about that.
Ghostbusters 2, by the
Gremlins.
way, in
84 is Gremlins 2, right?
I don't remember when Gremlins came out. I
I
know
feel like it's 84.
it was somewhere around there, and I know
Because it was
Temple of Doom
Christmas
is
movie.
Temple of Doom is I think 84 also.
Yeah, so I think 84 was probably the tipping point. They're like,
yeah.
whoa.
And Ghostbusters 2 is 1989, and it's also rated PG. So that's why there's no cigarettes, because PG-13
Yeah,
existed
no,
now,
that makes
but it's
Yep.
PG.
I just like that's one of the things that I remember about Ernie Hudson's character is he always had a fucking cigarette in his mouth.
Ray had a cigarette. Oh, that was one thing I
Yes.
forgot to point out. Was in the hotel when he first sees Slimer. He's just put a cigarette in his
Oh, and
mouth,
it's
he's walking-
dangling. Yeah.
And
Oh my
I-
god.
and I actually timed it. Like I went back and I was like, because he drops it, but it sticks to his
It's like
lip. and
4
hangs.
seconds.
I think I counted to 6 seconds. I forgot what it.
It's crazy how
Yeah,
long
6
it stays
seconds
there.
after opening his mouth, there's hang time. Because I said I'm really impressed with the hang time.
Oh yeah.
It's crazy to think because I used to be a smoker, like a heavy smoker, and I never noticed how much smoking was in that movie until I wasn't a smoker anymore.
Yeah, like they're giving each other cigarettes in the basement. So like by this point, you see, like they kind of said this is kind of like where the original script kind of started, was they're like the janitors, the ghost janitors, and they're worn out and whatever, and they hand off the containment device to Ernie Hudson's character, and then they go downstairs, and then simultaneously, this is where we meet William Atherton, the actor. I think his character's name is Walter Peck.
Heck yeah.
And everybody, and most people either recognize him from this movie or
Die Hard.
Die Hard.
Yep.
Yes.
The 80s favorite asshole.
Character actor.
Yes.
Yeah, he's a character actor. He is the 80s favorite.
Him
And
and the
asshole.
guy that's the principal in Breakfast Club. Those two guys are our favorite 80s assholes.
Right. And then honorable mention is Shooter McGavin. Nobody knows
Obviously.
that actor's
Christopher
real,
McDonald.
but nobody knows his
But
name.
he's not the 80s though.
Yeah,
Right, I'm
that-
saying,
he
but
came
it's
into the 90s.
Same.
Same type of,
Oh yeah,
of
no,
character
total.
actor. Yeah.
So yeah, he in special note, like he's like supposed to be, really nice, personal guy, the actor. But he, I think it was Ivan Reitman said that like a couple of years later, he ran into him somewhere and he was like, he was like, oh hey, my, his character, is popular, he's blowing up, he's been doing these other movies. He thought he'd be pretty cool. He goes, that movie's done to me. He's like, I'll go into bars and
This
people
man
will
has no
start
dick.
yelling at me, start calling me an asshole. I haven't done anything. He's like, or people like he said a school bus passed by him and all the kids were calling him dickless. Like,
Yeah.
Sorry. That was the ugliest laugh.
That was funny, bro.
I mean, I feel for the actor being defined by a role and having to deal with that.
That
But
happens a
it's
lot though.
A very
But-
funny moment in the movie.
Yeah.
But
when
it's
he,
also right, a testament to how good of an actor he is, right?
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
obviously.
and what I like about his character is he is on balance with, or like he's counters Venkman's smart ass. Usually Venkman's used to people like he kicks up the smart aleck and people
Yeah.
kind of back down. Him, on the other hand, just keeps escalating,
Matches it,
escalating,
yep.
escalating, matches it.
Just smarmy.
And I had to think, like, I wrote a note. I'm like, should it have been Venkman talking to him? Should it have been somebody else, like Ray, who I think like is a Boy Scout, or Egon, who would have just technical babbled him to death.
Yeah, I
Or
mean,
maybe Ernie.
somebody else would have been able to smooth it over and have it not escalate.
Right.
Venkman, for the movie to happen the way it happens, it had to be Venkman, because
Right.
they had to be at odds, and they had to, and like the moment that stands out is when he's like, you didn't say the magic word, and that's where you're talking about, like, most people, when you say that, everyone knows what that word is, but Peck goes, what's the magic word? Like,
Right.
he's like, I'm gonna make you spell this out for me.
Right.
Like, I'm not gonna just do what you want me to do. And yeah, I like that character. The movie's very uneven at this point for me,
Right.
but the Ernie Hudson, this character coming in, Walter Peck, they're a lot of fun. Does it make sense that the EPA is like randomly showing up at buildings and doing it? Not really.
And
but
I think,
do
yeah,
I
and
care?
I feel like
No.
this was commentary on the bureaucracy going on at the time that was ramping up. It's like I was like going through this montage. What triggered to where the EPA comes out? Like, who said they were polluting something?
Mhm.
Like what indications? And I think it's just more commentary on
Yeah.
like bureaucracies getting out
Sure,
of
like
hand
what-
back in the 80s.
I gotta look it up too. Like,
EPA
when
was
the EPA
relatively new.
established? Yeah,
It
that's
was
what I'm
relatively
thinking.
new because Nixon established the EPA.
1970. That's so.
So
Yeah,
it's
it's only been
14
around for,
years.
yeah.
So yeah, so it's like around for 14 years. So relatively as like a government, arm or whatever, it was pretty easy. So people probably didn't know exactly what they did. So they're like, oh, we'll just say it's the EPA. That's what it sounds
Right.
like to me.
And then like what Crystal was mentioning before about the sounds, like when they basically like flush the containment device into the wall, and like the sounds that were coming out, I'm like, what the hell did they do? I was like, they had to take
Right?
like a toilet. Like I imagine they took like a toilet, either sped it up or mixed it with something else to where it has like a toilet flushing sound, but with a ghost is what I felt like.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just like it. You ever see those Foley artists work, and it just makes no sense how they make those noises out of the things that they make those noises with. Like they probably just took a piece of cloth and just flipped it around really quick, and that's how they got that sound.
Right. And then I love they're explaining to Ernie about what's going, and they're Egon's using the Twinkie analogy.
Oh, yeah.
He's like,
Winston, yeah, no, yeah.
like-
Tell them about the Twinkie.
he's like,
What
tell him about the Twinkie. And then Peter's like, what about the Twinkie?
he just automatically just goes with this. It's like,
Right.
shit,
Yeah,
what's
he
going on with
came
Twinkie?
he came into the room at a weird part of the conversation, but he's just gonna dive in. He's
Yeah,
like,
just
sure.
go.
What about the Twinkie? Tell me. Sure. I'm
That
about
line
it.
always, I think about. Did you guys ever see that epic rap battle with the Mythbusters versus the Ghostbusters?
No.
Mm-mm.
I highly suggest you watch it. It's very good.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
One thing that we skipped over was where Venkman is able to find Sigourney Weaver's character after her practice. And he's showing some effort. Like he's like, she's like, wait, did you actually come in and listen to practice? He's like, yes, I think you were the best standing one in your row. She's like, okay, yeah, whatever. And and I remember the notes they were saying in the commentary, they're like, the sound guys hated that scene because of the water fountain. They're like, can we turn the water fountain off? And the city's like, no, you can't turn the water fountain off. And then they had the skaters in the background, and Bill Murray decided to like mimic them, act as his normal goofball self. So
Right.
can't forget that part where he convinces her to to go on a date on Thursday.
Yeah, and again, this is where the opportunity is missed for me, as I mentioned earlier, where he doesn't take a different approach, and that's where I wanted him to take just a little bit of a different approach, because he's still being smarmy, he's still kind of the same guy he's always been, and I just wanted him to kind of change up his game a little bit. That would convince her that, yeah, okay, now she knows that he's a successful scientist, that whatever he's doing is, but he's still that personal smarmy guy that she met before that she didn't have any interest in. And so it just, to me, felt like I just wanted him to just be a little bit different, just, go a little bit in a different direction to convince her that he's not just interested in her, you know, in like a sexual way, which is kind of how it feels still. And I don't know, that to me is just the moment where I go, I would have written that scene a little bit differently. Not that I'm a writer, not that I make movies, but that's just, to me, it would have been like, I think we needed to do something a little different there.
I still thought it was great, Bill Murray, but that's just me though.
I like Bill Murray. I'm not saying that I don't like him in the scene. I'm saying it doesn't make character sense for her to agree to like go on a date with this guy who's still the same guy that she didn't like before.
Well, don't
But it
forget,
also doesn't make character sense for him to change up what he's doing because it obviously was working for him.
don't forget,
But
she's
not with
Right?
her.
she's
Not with her,
watching.
was it?
She's been watching
but-
him in the montages though.
I know. It
He's
just-
been growing on her. You know, so she's watching the
So
commercials.
does that
she's
mean like
smiling.
she's only interested in him because he's successful?
that's how it plays to me, and I don't like that because
No,
I think
neither
she's a
one
better
of them
character than
comes
that.
out smelling like roses in that
Well,
instance.
don't forget, she's a musician. So like they're, you know, they.
Whoa.
What is that
Whoa, you're
supposed
just
to
throwing
mean?
shade at musicians?
No,
What's
I'm just
going on
saying she
here?
recognizes that
He does not endorse anyone else here.
the discipline, you know, that's coming. Like she's not going to look for a goof. Like she's less inclined as a goofball, you know, with like typically like classic musicians. At least that's how I feel. Like
Remember,
classic, you know,
starving artist. That's what it
Stereotype.
goes with.
so I
But
don't know.
she's got a nice apartment. Like, she's not a starving artist. What are you talking about?
She's
Yeah,
a,
she actually like she's an orchestra, right?
She's
So
a
she's
successful artist.
yeah.
she's an
actually, yeah.
accomplished classical musician. Is
Yeah.
the point
Yeah.
I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
So like,
But she's a classy. So what you're saying is like she's supposed to be a more classy lady, right?
I'm
Is that
not
what you're
saying
getting at?
classy. I'm just saying that she's kind of got like she's
Or
like she's
Prudent.
had years of training and focusing on herself and the
Right.
discipline and all this and that. So this is why a character like him who doesn't have the discipline and being a goofball where the chemistry is not supposed to be believable. Like that's why he has to grow on her and show some like, you know, a little bit.
I think we are totally in agreement. Like, we agree on that point. I don't think the movie did enough to show me that he had grown on her, other than just seeing that he's a success.
Right.
And that, to me, like, she still needs to see that there's something in his personality
Right.
that she's attracted to. And at
yeah,
this
it
point,
kind
it
of
hasn't
diminished
shown it to
both
us.
of them.
All right.
So I don't know. That's just my personal feeling.
I mean,
You don't have to agree with
I
me,
totally get
but-
that. But I feel like they're both like diminished in that. I feel like the relationship does, like, honestly, on paper, it should not work to begin with.
You know,
So,
But they do have
Um,
good chemistry. I'll
yes.
give you that one. Like, I
They do.
like the two of them together in terms of just like they play off one another well. But
they have similar hair.
Oh my gosh.
All
I'm
right.
one of those. I'm of the opinion that just like I'm sure everybody agrees with me. If this was just like real life, like Sigourney Weaver is like at least 5 levels out of his league.
100%.
And that's with him being funny. And believe me, that adds a lot of levels.
Don't forget, he's got a doctor on his, for a title, so that's gonna count
Yeah,
for something,
that's-
right?
Yeah.
Mm.
Hey,
I
She's
don't-
still
I don't
way
think
out of
so.
his league.
They don't just hand those out in education.
no, they don't.
Yeah, you have to pay for them.
Right, exactly.
So fast forward, she's coming back to her apartment after she's agreed to the date. She runs into Rick Moranis again, who's all excited about his party, and she has to disappoint him. She's like, "Well, I got a date." She's like, "What?" He's like visibly like shot in the chest. Like, "What are you, a date?" And she's like, "I'm sorry, I forgot." And he's like, "Well, maybe I'll bring him by the party." He's like, "Okay, yeah." And then
I'll
he's
tell
locked-
everyone you're coming by.
yes, and then he's locked out of his apartment.
For like the
Again.
4th time
Yeah.
at this
The
point.
Yeah.
third time.
Third time.
Yeah.
At this point, he's locked out of his apartment. Like I had to, like, when I was watching, I was like, how many times did he get locked out? 1, 2, 3. And this is where the movie really starts to escalate because Sigourney Weaver sits down on her chair, and has, and they're showing some vulnerability on her point because she starts undressing. She's talking to her mom. She's not distracted. She's
Mhm.
distracted. and then starts hearing the sound, and the special effects guys do that thing where the door is actually, it's made of rubber, and they're doing the hand gestures and freaking her out. And they said that like some kids really got freaked out about where the hands coming out of the table or out of the chair and gripping her.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, they said that she was really enjoying filming that scene. Like she had a lot of fun for some reason.
Okay.
Apparently. So
I mean, Sigourney Weaver just seems like, when you think of like her career arc, and we all loved her in Alien. And then she does something like Ghostbusters, where she plays on that comedy, coming back to the sci-fi genre with Galaxy Quest,
yes.
it just feels like she loves playing with this
Right.
type of like, material. And like, yeah, she's going to be in Alien, and she's going to be amazing in those Aliens movies. And we're all going to love Ellen Ripley and how amazing she is. But then she's also like, but I'm going to play with these characters. I'm going to have a lot of fun, and I'm going to be, kind of, she's okay with being like hypersexualized because it's the point. Like she's making commentary with it. And that's true in this movie as well. And so, yeah, I think Sigourney Weaver is, as we've already talked about how incredibly attractive she is, she's also an incredible actress. And
So
I love what she brings to all of these roles that we, have mentioned here. And especially in this movie, like I think she does a really great demon possessed person.
Oh yeah,
she is
good.
so compelling,
especially the makeups
as Zool,
Yeah.
no Dana only Zool, like,
well,
yeah.
I couldn't stop focusing on her eyes and what they did with the makeup on that part.
Yeah.
Like it just daggers in there.
Yeah, pops.
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump ahead real quick. Gozer, right? The main villain.
Yes.
The red eyes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. I
Those,
love those.
The red contact lens that they said was very, very uncomfortable for the actress.
Oh, I can imagine, because it's like bulging her eye.
Oh yeah, because like what contacts like those are just not breathable because they, for aesthetic's sake.
Well, I think it's a hard plastic or something, isn't it? Actually,
I don't remember if they said it was
I'm not
plastic or glass, but I actually had that picture pulled up.
I'm glad you did, because I love it. But gosh, yeah, that's got to be painful. Because I know
how did we not get David Bowie for this role? I just gotta say it.
Not wrong.
Oh, I forgot what other
Probably
actress they
costs
said
too much
originally.
money.
There was somebody else,
Wrong,
another
too.
famous actress that was supposed to do that, but canceled on him. But they said that she was such a team player and just into this, even though all this was uncomfortable and she had a lot of weird like movements and stuff like that. And she was such a good.
Yeah, she does great. I didn't mean to say like, I just mean like when I saw this character for the first time, 6-7 years ago, like that was immediately in my brain. I went, is that David Bowie? And then it's like, no, of course it's not David Bowie, but it should be. Like this is David Bowie's look. Like.
But yeah, the eyes, I love it. I love those eyes.
Right. And then Rick Moranis is having the accountant party. And one of the lines I love is he goes, I just write this all off. He goes, that's why I don't invite my friends. I just invite my clients.
Yes,
like to
I
their
love
face, like as a matter of fact. And he's just pumping. He's like, hey, this is Sue whatsoever. They got this cleaner and receivership. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, he's just telling everybody else's like financial business, like she's been pulling on this, salary for 2 years or whatever
it was. Yeah,
what is he talking about?
Yeah.
So another thing, like we were talking about how like not holding up is that creepy nice guy routine that Rick Moranis has. That's one of those things. It's just a little bit like, like I'm the nice guy kind of thing. Like, why wouldn't you want to hang out with me? And it's not as pronounced as some of the other ones, but it's still there.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that it gets away with in this movie is because he's never a threat, so there's never,
he's never pushy about it or anything like that. So he's not aggressive, but it is that kind of like, just kind of, if any, speaking as honestly, I know, shocking, a woman, it just having anybody just try to even just beat you down with niceness can get to be a lot.
Yeah.
And again, I think that, sorry, Aaron, I was just going to say, you can appreciate, because Sigourney Weaver at no point is ever interested in him. You know that she is feeling exactly how you're describing, Crystal. Like
but
she
always
has
always kind.
But you have to be. That's the point, right?
Exactly.
Like she doesn't have the option to not respond. Like if she were to say how she's really feeling or how she really feels about him, then she would get labeled with a certain way, or she could open herself up to some kind of violence, or whatever that is. Yeah,
she's always tiptoeing by his door, not to let her
alert
him
absolutely
that she's there. So he's just like
so obviously so it's not like he's like the aggressive nice guy, but he is that nice guy to the point where she doesn't want to like just be around him because he's just gonna try to push his niceness on her to try and get somewhere with her, and it's just not gonna happen. But the role very well acted by Rick Moranis. Like he did a good job. But it's just one of those things you look at it now and you're like, I know, especially now looking at it as an adult, because when I was younger, I looked at it and it just, it made me laugh, right? It's like, look at this stupid guy, right? And now you're like, oh, well, that's totally colored differently now from my experiences.
Sorry. Well, Aaron, were you going to add to that? Because I know I stepped on you on accident. So
no, because I was trying to say is like, I get the whole night guy approach on it, but I never felt, and maybe I'm just wrong, I didn't get that it was the nice guy thing. I always get that it was the socially awkward. Like, I don't know what to do in these situations. And even to the point of where it's like, are you maybe on a spectrum somewhere? Because it was like, he wasn't, because like y'all said, why are you throwing this person's business out here? Why are you saying, hey, none of these people are my friends? It's like, he doesn't know anything. It's like, he's either really socially awkward or he's somewhere like on the spectrum or something.
On her signals kind of thing. Like one of those, like he's throwing these signals, they're pretty obvious, but he's just, it's not that he's intentionally oblivious, he's oblivious.
Well, like, you see the way he dances.
I can see that.
Oh my God, the dancing,
I can definitely
and
see
it's,
that.
A little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. It can be both. Like
exactly.
And so, I think that's a valid point too, Aaron.
Well, that's the thing too, is like, because when I said like the nice guy, there was never anything that he did was malicious, right? So it was never, he was like, like Robert said, he never felt like a threat.
Right.
So that was,
Yeah, because he always gave her space. He wasn't like right in her, every now and then he gets in her face, but he kind of backs up. So I don't know, but I always just wondered if it was the overly nice approach, or is it, I just don't understand social cues.
Right. Yeah, I think what makes it a little bit more palatable is that a lot of times with this type of trope, the nice guy follows you all the way to your door.
Mm-hmm.
He does not do that. Like he steps out his door, he's interacting with her, she's walking past, he not follow her. Right. Like he just
once, right? Only one time he does, but then he backs up, I think, too, because the whole TV comment.
And so I think that is what stands out to me, is that, again, it wasn't like I'm forcing my presence on you, but it was hey, I want to talk. Can we talk? And the answer is always no. Like every time. And you would expect him to eventually pick up on.
I think the other thing is Rick Moranis stood like a foot and a half shorter than her. It's oh God, there's a height difference right here. Like, I don't think she feels intimidated. It's like, boy, you down here.
He's like, uppies.
Right? Because he's so tiny. It's just like, I forget Rick Moranis was a small guy, or is a small guy.
Yes.
Death by snoo.
Death by snoo.
Always. It's the best way to go.
I mentioned earlier, Casey Kasem was talking, and the tall blonde that Rick Moranis was dancing with, that was Casey Kasem's wife.
What?
Oh, that's interesting.
So I did not know that.
Which I loved that scene, and Aaron and I were both laughing when it happened. Is she like when the dog pops out and like the party goes nuts, she jumps onto the balcony. Everyone else is like going for the door, and she's like, I'm going to I'm out of here. Like the closest exit that I could find. And it totally made me laugh. I was like,
it's
where
the
is
blonde
she going
too? It's like, well, the blonde went to the worst place possible. Oh my god!
Trying
I
to
always
figure
thought she
it out,
just yeeted
guys.
herself out.
There's no escape from there. Where is
Right.
she going?
She just yeeted. She's like, I'm out. Yeet.
And there's
Jumps.
obviously no fire escapes in that building. So and
Oh
of course,
my
you
God.
know, Rick Moranis' other good line there. He's like, okay, who brought the dog? And then boom.
Yeah. Oh,
So
that's-
I love the physical comedy of him like tossing the jacket in. You know, he has
And
no
no
clue
clue.
that it's there, and it just lands on the, and it's just like that's some good physical comedy there.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then of course we talk about how he's being chased.
Yep.
You know, and you have like that New York moment again where people at dinner we talked about where they couldn't care less about the guy yelling. They're like, why is the guy yelling? I'm back to dinner. Whatever.
Yep.
He's obviously under distress, but he's not in here. The door's locked, whatever. So and then there's actually a deleted scene where he's running through the park and you see Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, but they are dressed as bums and they're in a totally different character. Basically, Bill Murray is his character Carl from Caddyshack. Like he's talking just like there's a guy, and then Dan Aykroyd has this like gruffiness, like "Rah!" You know, like they're just talking about something, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? And then you see Rick Moranis run by. He's like, it's coming after me, and I'm like, oh okay. And then I'm like, I can see why they cut that out.
Yeah, that would make sense to cut out.
It was still
yeah,
funny,
it's superfluous.
still funny, but and then you see Bill Murray comes, you know, he's walking up to the scene. He's like, what happened? He's like, oh, somebody brought a dog, you know. And then he walks by.
Does he say like a bear or something like that? Like there's
Yeah, I think he says
Yeah.
a bear.
Well,
Rick
yeah,
Moranis.
the doorman, as he's talking to somebody else before it comes jumping out, he's like, does he say something about a bear? And then the thing jumps out and knocks him down, you know. So he's like, somebody was having a party and they brought a dog or something, you know.
You know what? Dedicated acting though to that doorman because he didn't need a fall like that. He like
Oh,
jumped out of the way.
It was a hard fall too. I remember
Yes.
that.
Because I looked, I was like, did he just like yeet himself? He just jumped away. Okay, dedication.
So, and then Bill Murray knocks the door and she's like, are you the key master? And he's like, no. So you see her like
that's the door.
disgusted and slams the door. And he's like, hey.
Knocks again.
Like, yes, I am. You know,
He sent
and then,
me here.
yeah, that's right. And then
I know him. He's a good personal friend, or you know, whatever he
Something,
says.
yeah.
yeah. And then he's looking around, he sees the slime everywhere. So, and you know what's interesting? At the beginning, when he's collecting the slime sample in the library, they said he only did one scene of that because he did not want to mess with the slime again. Like he hated it. And he's like, I'm only doing one shot. That's it.
Yeah.
So was that a
Yeah,
real
that
reaction
sounds
then?
like
And he keeps like wiping it out all the books and everything. You know? Yeah. No, that's
So
good.
So I wonder if they like warned him that when he walked in because he kind of looked at it and was just like,
yeah. So I don't know about that part.
I
They didn't say
wonder.
that.
I don't ask him.
And then of course we mentioned before, this is where she's like basically wanting to go at it with him and he's trying to be the good buck guy. And then that famous levitation scene, which they said that she was in a full body cast, basically a full torso cast to accomplish the levitation and rotation in the air.
Interesting.
So,
Yeah. And we did talk about this being a redeeming quality of his, right? That he does not take advantage of her, but it's not fully redeemable because he isn't shy about taking some looks. Let's be honest.
Not wrong.
Like he's still like, I'll take a look at what's going on here.
It's Sigourney Weaver. You
do some
research.
Every talking about
research,
like looking at her as she's like going like looking under her.
Yeah,
Well, I think that might have been the scientist in him. He's like, how is this?
I need to figure out what's going on here.
Because
obviously, this
little
is
column A, little column B. He could sell it as it's scientific, but we also know that he's also
we're gonna take a
doing
line
the other thing he wants to do.
We're gonna take a line from Big Bang Theory. Sometimes the hero does look.
and to the point like where she's up there winning down, he's like, can I have Brenda back, please? Like it sounded so pitiful.
Dana.
Dana. He's like, can I have Dana back? Like it sounded so pitiful and cute. And then it's like,
That's not
Dana,
wrong.
only Zool.
Right.
Yeah,
And
she did a really good job.
do you know who
Oh,
did,
yeah.
That whole scene is just great.
do you know who did the possessed voices that came out of her?
No.
Ivan
You're-
Reitman.
Tell us.
Who?
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
he did those possessed voices.
Why do I know
Nice.
that name?
He's the director of the movie.
Oh yeah, that's what's like. Wait, who did that? Why do I know that name? All of a sudden? Look, my mind drew a blank for a minute. All right,
You've only
I'm thinking
said his
Sigourney
name like
Weaver.
15 times. It's fine.
I think it's Sigourney Weaver in that outfit again.
And the last thing I'll mention about that scene was that was what you see is actually the second time they filmed it. They filmed it and just went on with what they were doing. And then later, when they were looking at the footage, they realized there was a guy somewhere in the frame and his shadow. To the
Oh,
point
no.
they couldn't cut it off. Like they had we have to redo that scene all over again. So
I hate when that happens. I hate
That's
that
rough.
so much.
so
and we get the callback later when he's talking about what happened is, which I think is a very funny joke, is that she sleeps above the covers, 4 feet above the covers.
Oh, yeah.
and referencing this moment, it's like,
Yeah.
all right, yeah, I'm on board. I like that.
Yeah.
so
Yeah. This just goes back to good writing, right?
right. And then so the next scene you see the police are coming there and Janine's like,
Mhm.
are you guys dropping off or picking up?
That's a great line.
That's a great line.
Good.
Hey, you know what
Every line that woman delivered was golden.
And what I
She's so
love about
good.
this scene is it shows you like the city of New York now trusts those guys. Like the cops are coming to them like, we don't know what to do with this guy. Let's go talk to the Ghostbusters.
We got
Like,
a
they're-
crazy. We don't want to put him in jail. They won't take him at Bellevue.
Yeah.
Where can we it's gotta
No.
be you guys.
Throw him
Right?
here.
He takes 2 seconds out of him. He's like, you should bring him in.
Yes.
He does his little scanning thing. He's like, yeah, I think bring him inside.
And then of course, well, like I said before, Janine's trying to like, you're such a humanitarian. And
Fight so
Egon
hard.
and Egon's like, I don't think he's human.
Just flat out ignoring her.
Yeah. So
Oh my god.
Yeah. And the whole scene with Egon and Rick Moranis, and like as he's asking him questions and getting information. Yeah, I mean, like that's all, again, it's good writing, it's good comedy, as Egon's like trying to figure out what the heck is going on, and he's getting more and more information. Meanwhile, he gets the phone call from Bill Murray and Venkman, and they're starting to piece things together. And and I love that moment where Venkman's like, we got to get these two together. That'd be dynamite. And Egon's just, I think that would be an
Oh, no.
extraordinarily bad idea.
It's
Or
like,
whatever he
just
said.
this is sarcasm.
So, yeah. And so I
I
think
will say-
again that's all working really well in that moment.
I do like the part because as he's talking to Egon on the phone, I think Sigourney Weaver's already drugged up, right? Like he already knocked her
Yeah.
out.
300
Mhm.
300 cc's of Thorazine over here.
Right. But that like breathing was, I don't know, I guess that was her, but I'm like, dang, you're selling it, because she's like, for a while I'm like,
Yeah.
Like
oh,
hyperventilating over here.
yes.
Mhm.
I was like, this poor woman's gonna pass out.
Can we go back for a minute and talk about just really quick the terror dog itself and just how great that looked?
That was something else they kind of like worried about kids scaring. And they
The terror
And
dog.
then said, who cares?
and they said it was a real, like there was physical, like except for when it's jumping around, you can see that stop motion animation, but like when it's in the closet or once it's like in his living room and then in the hallway screaming at them, they said that was all like animatronic real thing right there. And then
Mhm.
Ivan Reitman's kids were like even asking like, wait, that was real? He's like, yeah, that was real. Like
I mean, yeah, like that thing is
Well-
really it's a really well done puppet, right? And it's like I have to say, purely from an artistic standpoint, they're really just beautiful.
Oscar
Like
worthy.
especially for their time. Yeah, absolutely. Oscar worthy. See, another point.
I liked
I can't
until-
come with you on that one.
I was okay
What?
until we did the stop motion part. Then I lost. I'm like, it looks way too fake.
Well,
You could tell the lighting was off on it.
I'm talking about like the puppets themselves.
It was a
like
nice looking
that
one.
actual, like they visually
Uh.
look good.
Don't forget 80s TVs that
Robert doesn't forget.
stop motion
Robert
TV.
doesn't think so. No.
Yeah, I
Not
mean, this
wrong.
is another the creatures and the whole Gozer storyline. This is where we get into the uneven part that doesn't work for me. Like that, the demon possession storyline and like the creatures and the Gozer, like that part is so less interesting to me than the building of the Ghostbusters team, than them finding random ghosts around New York. Like I understand what they're trying to do. They're giving us the big antagonist and all that stuff, but it's just I'm not as interested in it. I'm not as invested in it. I don't really care about these creature dog things, and I'm not scared of them. And I'm an adult, right? I didn't see it as a kid, so I'm not like it doesn't work for me. And again, nobody else has to agree with me. That's fine. That's just
I
how
also
I feel.
just didn't
All
get
right, I had a quick question then, just really quick. Have spoiler alerts. Have you seen Afterlife then?
I have seen no Ghostbusters movies except this one, because I saw this
Okay.
one 6 or 7 years ago. I saw this movie and it didn't meet the hype. And I went, why would I watch any of the other ones if everyone says this is the best one and I thought it was okay? Like, why would I keep watching more? And so I just have never sought out any more.
say what.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, I get that.
And maybe
but,
I will after this. I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the movie this time. So maybe I will seek out more Ghostbusters movies. I'm just saying I didn't at the time. So this is still the only one I've ever seen.
I mean, I definitely suggesting 2 and Afterlife. I think they're like at least like sometimes when you go into a movie, you just have to know what you're going into a movie for, right? And you just have to just be there for it. And I think Ghostbusters, all of them, are that. Like you have to know that you're walking into something that's basically a tongue-in-cheek comedy, and you just have to like try to have fun with it. And I think that's a lot, like especially even like the Gozer storyline, like where it is a lot heavier than the rest of it. So I understand the disconnect of what you're saying. But that's why I brought up Afterlife, because I thought that Afterlife did a better job of blending all of that. So I highly suggest that.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I liked it better the second time because I knew what I was getting in for, right? The first time, again, it just didn't meet the hype and the expectations that I had put on it based on what other people had said. I'm not blaming anyone for saying it's one of the greatest comedies. People feel that way. They're valid to think that. It just didn't meet that for me. And so then watching it this time with kind of that, okay, I know what I'm in for. I've seen it before. I was definitely much more open to the type of comedy. I was enjoying it. And again, this portion of the movie, I wasn't as engaged with. And part of that is I didn't buy in, like I didn't care about Rick Moranis' character as much as he was a good actor. I didn't care about his character. Sigourney Weaver, I thought she was an uneven character. Again, not the actress, but the actual character. I wasn't understanding her motivations or why she was with. And so it was like that portion of the story was around characters that I wasn't as connected to. Right. I want the Ghostbusters. That's who I care about.
Don't forget, they didn't have a fully gelled script until they were done filming the entire movie.
It feels that way sometimes.
They said even at the they have a YouTube channel. It's like this was a S show or shit, like they were, I think they talked about this movie. Like Ivan Reitman, when he came to the studio to pitch the movie, they're like, well, what kind of budget do you need? He didn't have a fully gelled budget. He just threw out $30 million. And they were like, okay. And he's like, really? Like, yeah. He's like, and they're like, so long as it's done and ready to go out on such and such date, which apparently was June 7th or 8th. June 7th stands out. So it was released June 8th. So they were like, yeah, $30 million, as long as you have it done by, June 1984, so the movie probably by this point is probably losing some of its, where you're kind of falling off on it is because he even, like they said, when they were filming the scene at the end on the rooftop, they still had no idea exactly how they were going to finish it. They're like, how about we do it this way, or this thing, this, that, and they're like, okay, that we think that works. So I
Okay.
think where you're kind of losing that semblance of a good script where it's fully formed and gelled and been run over, been looked over 100 times, is probably where you're having a problem in picking up on that.
Yeah, maybe. And the comedy work is still fun. Like, I'm still
Right.
enjoying individual moments and individual scenes and those types of things. Again, I'm just not as invested in what's happening, plot wise, as
Right.
maybe earlier in the movie, where I was really enjoying all of the build up and everything. Again, it's personal feelings. That's how I viewed it as I watched the movie. So,
Speaking of scenes, the next scene, you see the Ecto one with Ray and Ernie Hudson's character, Dan Aykroyd. And this is another spot where Ernie Hudson's actually got a good speaking part. They're talking about end of times and Ray's like, oh, this and that. And Ernie Hudson's character is like, dude, we're living that right now. And Ray's like, oh. And what I like about that is you have these great, he's like, the only time they used a helicopter in the movie apparently was when they're filming them driving through New York. And then you get that great pan shot. I'm not sure which bridge it is. So it's Brooklyn Bridge or whatever, but you get those good night skylines in New York with the bridges there. And you can actually see the Twin Towers in the background.
Yeah, I commented to Aaron when we were watching. I was like, "That's weird to see those in the movie."
Isn't that crazy that that's a touchstone that we have, with movies? Like, if it's of New York, is there's a before and after, and that's just crazy.
Yeah, and I do love that scene of them talking, and I think when it ends and you mentioned Dan Aykroyd kind of being weirded out, doesn't he say something about let's put on the radio, or he's like
music on,
we just need to stop talking about the end times. And it's just it was a funny moment, which I will say most of the time in this movie, the best humor is coming whenever Bill Murray is on screen. Right. So it was nice to get a moment of just these two. Right. And we kind of lose Bill Murray for a little bit. I mean, we get the Rick Moranis and Egon stuff. We get this scene. Bill Murray goes away for a solid 15 minutes of this movie, and it doesn't really suffer. I'm still enjoying everything that's going on. So,
but he comes right back.
He does
in the next scene. And this is where you kind of get a little bit of semblance of seriousness from Bill Murray, when they realize what's about to happen with the EPA and the cop.
Right.
Apparently that was a real New York City cop.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is where Bill Murray's character Venkman is trying. He's like, my friend, you have no idea what you're going to do. He's like, you guys are going to be responsible for what happens, this and that. And they're like, no, go ahead and do it. And then this is where we get more practical effects, where there was somebody behind the wall with a bunch of big lights punching the walls and sending things flying.
I want that job.
And then they all run out of the fire station and stuff. They were basically we're just throwing stuff off the roof, and then somebody had started throwing water off, and the costume people came running out. They're like, we only have one suit for Harold Ramis, and that's it. Don't get it wet.
Yeah, I think this is another this is a lot of fun. We get, I think, do Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson, they're not there in the scene, right? They haven't.
They pull up later.
They pull up after
they pull up after. So it's Egon and Bill Murray and
Rick Moranis
and Rick Moranis is there, and then Annie Potts and William Atherton and the cop, and then the dude that's being told to just shut it down, right? And he's like, I don't know what
the goofy guy. He was kind of goofy too.
But that's that scene, as it's escalating, and you get Egon trying to be explain the scientific technical things that are gonna and you get Venkman just being everything's gonna explode, don't do this is a bad choice. And I love the moment that the cop gets, and the fact that he's in New York, that he is a real cop. It makes it even more poignant when he's like, you do your job, don't tell me how to do mine.
Yeah.
I'm like that felt so real in that moment. And so that extra knowledge really does hit that home. But yeah, that's another really great scene. We only get really 3 scenes with William Atherton. We get the first scene where he's there, we get this scene, and then the one in the mayor's office is really all we get with him, and he's so good.
You do get him at the end.
That's true, but
when he gets 2,000 pounds of
I mean, he's not really like
right.
He's just there. But
right.
three meaty scenes with him, and he's definitely stands out. He's great in this scene as well.
One of the deleted scenes he was talking more at the end there.
Oh, okay. That explains why he would be right there then.
Right. And so they're in jail. And what I found funny was like, where did the blueprints come from in jail? And
right.
Then,
no one picked them up off him.
Because Dan Aykroyd, like he's just carrying him around with him. Don't worry about it.
Well, when I asked that question, and then I see him pull out another one from inside his jumpsuit or his coveralls, I'm like, he had them stashed in his pants. What possessed him to have them in his pants? But whatever.
Boy Scouts, be prepared. You never know.
Right.
Like I said, he's like the Boy Scout of the movie.
He really is, though.
And this is where I think one of my favorite lines in the whole movie, and there's a lot of good ones, but one of my favorite lines is when he's like trying to, he's explaining all about the building and how, and you get Bill Murray just be like, talk to me like I don't know anything about engineering or architecture or whatever. Yeah. And I love Bill Murray in that moment. I'm like that's great. Like that's
Ernie
so
Hudson's
brilliant.
line steals it for me. He's like, I'm going to need a different attorney than y'all or something like that.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, he does.
That's funny too.
I love that line.
All the inmates are like paying close attention. Venkman's like, did you get that?
To be a fly on the wall in that conversation is like, I'm sure people, they think half of us are crazy. Listen to these crazy people.
Yeah, I mean, what you mentioned, Aaron, is the button, because at first he's like, so you're going to go tell a judge that like all of this is happening, like, and this is what we're going to expect. I need a different lawyer.
Not with them.
Ernie, I don't know these guys. I've only been here 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
This is also where you get a semi-smile. Like apparently Harold Ramis made it a point that he was not going to smile at all in the movie, or as little as possible. So like he's had like a cynical smile there when they were basically like, it's going to be the end of the world.
Yeah.
And
oh my God, I just pictured that smile.
Yeah.
Yep.
And when they get notified that they're getting out of jail, we realize, oh, it's what's his name, Reginald Bell Johnson, or as everybody commonly known, Carl Winslow from Family Matters.
Oh,
and he's
also the cop from Die Hard.
Dad.
Right. So he's a cop again. So
one of the best TV dads ever.
Absolutely.
And then briefly next scene we see Harold Ramis meet the keymaster and the gatekeeper come together, and they start making out. And I was like, in my mind, I was like, how many accountant nerds or whatever was watching this scene? I was like, yes.
All I have to do is get possessed by a demon.
Gordon Weaver too.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then
it just has to be possessed by a demon.
Right.
Fine.
And then next scene, we're at the city hall, and it's actually New York City Hall that they're filming on. Yep. And what I love is like there's all this bureaucracy there. They're trying to figure out what's going on. And what I love in this is like out of nowhere, the bishop comes in, and I think it's the same actor who played the priest in Caddyshack. I feel like
he looked familiar.
He looked like the guy like that was making the bad like Jewish joke in the locker room, or like somebody was like, "Hey, what'd you hear that joke about the Jew? This and that," and then the guy starts laughing. You're like, "Oh, that's messed up." And you see he's a man of the cloth with like the priest. You're like, "Oh, I think it was the same actor." But I found it funny.
You're not gonna catch me with Caddyshack references. I've seen it one time, and that is enough.
I don't even think I've seen that movie all the way through once.
Well, nobody's perfect. So
I know.
If we did that one on Is It Still Good? I don't know about that.
Yes, that's where I derive some of my personality is from Bill Murray's character, and that I got that going for me. Anywho.
I mean, I just go, what about Bob? It's just a great movie.
Absolutely. Groundhog Day. I mean, we could just go through Bill Murray's filmography and we're gonna have a good time.
Scrooge, which is the
Or-
movie we're going to have to do for Christmas.
I could
But
do tangent alert is what I could do.
I know. I just wanted to say that, and I was done. I promise.
No worries. But yeah, like all these bureaucracies, all these important people, and the bishop can just walk in like it's nothing, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Bishop so and so," kisses the hand, and basically, the bishop's like, "Hey, stuff is jacked up,"
Yeah.
And then they have the whole discussion, explaining what's going on, and the mayor's like, what did the cop or whatever, he's like, look, over at that other building the walls are bleeding or something along those lines or something like that.
Yeah.
So, and then of course everyone's favorite quote comes in, this dickless bureaucrat, and they're like, is this true? And Bill Murray's like,
Yes.
Yes, it's true.
this man has no
no
dick. So like, and I had a spot where I said, what's going to be the best quote of the movie, and I'm putting it in. That's the best quote of the movie out of all this is me. It's true. This man has no dick.
Not wrong. I like that quote. I thought it was funny.
It's definitely very memorable. It's very funny. I don't think it would be my favorite quote of the movie.
Mhm.
I'm not sure what mine would be, but it's I don't know. Like I think it might be that Bill Murray line that we just talked about, where he's like, talk to me like I don't know anything about it. Like, it's just like that to me is just a perfect summation of like, how someone who has been BSing his way through everything would react in that moment. And it's just a perfect character moment as well. So
I think number 2 for me is what's coming up is when they're like, are you a god?
No.
Someone asks you if you're a god,
You
say yes.
Which pays off in afterlife.
Right, exactly. So great callback. So yeah, and then they basically kicks the EPA out, and then it's like, Ghostbusters, go do what you need to do, and great acting in that scene, even though it's kind of comedic, but the guys, I feel like all the comedians do a great job of delivering just how serious the situation is, even as outlandish, that the city is being filled up with angry paranormal activity. So that's just my feeling.
Yeah.
And the crowd goes wild. New York City goes nuts for the Ghostbusters.
Right. And they said that scene where they're driving down in New York, in Manhattan, next to Central Park, I forgot how many blocks they said they blocked off for 3 days of shooting.
Yeah.
3 days of shooting. They basically, the NYPD told them, like, some of those streets got so backed up, like they said about 60% of Manhattan had got backed up at some points while filming that. And Dan Aykroyd, as they're filming it at one point, sees Isaac Asimov, who's one of his heroes. He's like, "Oh, Mr. Asimov, how are you doing?" He like starts trying to talk to him. He's like sees him and he's like dressed. He's like, what do you do? What are you doing? Are you responsible for this? He's like, well, yeah, we're filming this movie called Ghostbusters. He's like, you are destroying the city.
Whoops. I gotta say, I love the smash cut after the mayor asks them, like, what do you need? And it smash cuts to like the National
freaking National Guard.
Yeah.
like the Ghostbusters have that much cachet, I guess, that they just
With
get
this
whatever they
speech,
want.
that's why. The millions of voters.
Right.
Millions of registered voters.
Registered voters.
I felt like there was it made me think back to Blues Brothers, like to the point where they get the National Guard called out on them at one point. So
Yeah.
I don't know, considering it's Ivan Reitman and Dan Aykroyd. And,
Use of unnecessary force has been approved.
Right.
It's like, it also, that moment you just called out, Aaron, about the, you'll have saved the lives of millions of registered voters, again makes me think of like Jaws, where it's like they're making politically motivated decisions,
yeah.
because it's like, and so again, it's got some good commentary in it as well, like this, that we talked about that earlier with the classism stuff, and certainly in this moment as well, where it's making kind of a commentary on public officials and leaders and why they make the choices they do, and how it's not always, motivated out of the goodness of their heart, but sometimes it can be, the politically expedient thing to do.
Right.
Also. So
Yep.
And so they did a really good transition at this part where it's New York, the set, and then when the ground starts opening up and when they pan around again, they're now at a set in LA with hydraulics on the ground going up and down. So and they said they mentioned how like the extras were awesome in New York. Like they just loved filming with the extras in New York back then. They were just so enthusiastic about everything and having fun. So next after that, we're almost at the end, guys, in Crystal. You get this.
I'm a guy, it's fine.
Okay. But what's funny to me is the transition. Like they are like they get that energy back up after like they look like they died in the ground, and then they climb out and everyone's like, yeah, they're like, yeah, we're gonna go save them, and like run into the doors, and then it transitions to them like dying going up the stairs, or like oh, like the energy immediately gets zapped out of the movie because they're like having to go up 20 flights of stairs and die. So
it's a funny moment.
How out of breath all of them are.
20 seconds apart.
I've just been recently rewatching The Last of Us, and there's like 2 or 3 moments in that show where they have to climb up a bunch of stairs, and like they have the same reaction. And so that was like fresh in my mind when I was watching that. I was like, yeah, going up all those flights of stairs, especially like if you're carrying that equipment, I was like, that is exhausting. Like,
yeah, I was
that
gonna say, I'd rather die. Just show me. It's fine.
Just let New York die now.
Right.
And then they discover that there's these weird steps, and they go up there, and it's kind of an almost like an homage to a Wild West, where they kind of set line up together and move, kind of address the danger head on.
I think at that point, though, was my Robert was talking about that when we were watching it. His favorite part, that'd be me. Okay, you go first. With Bill Murray.
It's like he's very polite. After you. Go ahead.
But I love that smart ass part of Vecman. And
where
you have
do these
Dan
stairs
Aykroyd.
go?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, not wrong. He is not wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember that part.
Yeah, because you have Bill Murray kind of side steps, and all of them kind of go in front of him. Smart move.
Typical Venkman energy.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then when you see this scene where it's like the top of the tower is transitioned to this like altar and in other universe or dimension or whatever, it made me think back to the times I would go to Universal Studios. And I don't think I ever saw the show, but I remember seeing the commercials. But then I was never there for the shows, but they had like this whole show somewhere at Universal Studios where the Ghostbusters were there and fighting, Zool or whatever. And they had like a full, costume, Gozer or whatever, terrorizing Universal Studios there. And it just, to me, I'm like, I feel like Universal did a good job capturing the energy from that part of the movie, because like every time I always think back to that. So
nice. I didn't know they did that.
Yeah. So, and then you get another taste of Dan Aykroyd's criminal. Did you guys know that he majored in criminal psychology or something to do with criminal science?
I didn't know that.
That's why he started.
Yeah, I think he was a psychologist for sure, right? A psychiatrist.
I want to say it was like criminal psychology. So that's why he can talk about law stuff so well. He's like that, because I remember him doing an interview where he's like, yeah, I spent 4 years studying criminal psychology. It got out and went into acting.
So perfect career path.
Yeah. So he does that whole spiel saying like, you need to, vacate this and that, blah, 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 and vacate
or a parallel dimension
and this and that. And then Venkman's like, That's good. That'll do, Ray. That'll do it.
Go get him, Ray.
Right. Well, that's a great callback because he says "go get her," which is what his plan was at the beginning for the library.
Right.
Just go get her. Like it's a great moment of like it's Venkman just being like, let me twist the knife a little bit. This isn't gonna work, but I'm gonna make Ray go do this.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead. You said go on now.
And I have notes here saying that was like before he did his Jack Webb role when they did the reboot of Dragnet. So I feel like Dragnet, his character in Dragnet, like that's that same energy. So that he did with Tom Hanks. And then of course the whole like she asks, "Are you a god?" And he says no, and then they get
die.
And then Winston's like, when somebody asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
And I do think that's one of those moments where the power of Zool does get a little bit undercut because she like hits them all with lightning and then they're all fine. And I'm like, is this like, isn't that supposed, like she says then die and she hits them. It's not like they dodge it or anything. Like this is, and so again, it's another moment where I'm like, I know what type of movie this is, and obviously they're not all gonna die.
Don't forget the writing.
Yeah,
like they were still, it's
right. It's like, just one of those weird things where I go like, I don't feel like this villain's actually that much of a threat.
Look,
because she learned how to use 4 humans.
She learned how to use Force lightning from the Emperor, and it's not very effective.
She's never been. This is her first trip.
Yeah, she doesn't have accuracy yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh no, she hits them. She's accurate.
Yeah,
she's way more accurate than their proton guns. Which all over the place.
Yeah,
she's just never been to New York.
Look, she quit after day 1 of learning how to use the Force. All right. Yeah. She never learned.
She's like, I learned everything. I'm good now.
Right.
So
sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna move on. So then they're like, all right, we got her. This is New York, and then they try to zap her with the proton packs, and then she does some gymnastics and then disappears. And says,
and I love the false confidence they have where they think they've defeated her for 5 seconds. Or
whatever. We did it.
So trophy.
Yeah. And Egon, again, being the scientist, is the one to be like, guys, I don't think that did not go the way we
easy.
Right. Yeah.
And then, she makes that whatever spell or whatever saying, the destroyer is going to be whatever you think next. And they're like, don't think of anything. And of course, the Boy Scout thinks of the Stay Puft marshmallow. Which actually was in their original script, the campy, futuristic Ghostbusters script. Yes, this was part of the original script.
I mean, when you write a giant marshmallow man, you follow through on a giant marshmallow.
And I love that kind of comedic beat of like Bill Murray, turning to Ernie Hudson and turning to, Harold Ramis and be like, did you guys you didn't think of any, I didn't think of any, and Dan Aykroyd's just slowly backing away. Like maybe he won't ask me.
I couldn't help it.
Yeah, it sounded like in his head, it's like, be normal, be normal, be normal, be normal.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, I just thought of something that would never harm me. It's
And the great thing is, again, called to Afterlife. Spoiler alert. I love how they brought Stay Puft in.
Yeah,
to Afterlife.
Little
I thought it was so good.
Robert wouldn't know.
I thought Afterlife was such a great continuation.
Yeah. It was a nice closing of their story.
Yes, it's very good.
I teared up.
Same.
It was several times myself, so I understand. There was a really good movie, especially just like the hat off continuously to Harold Ramis and his character. So
in this movie, I almost felt like sad for the Stay Puft. Like he's just
he's just not just the marshmallow man.
He looks menacing because of his size. But as he comes in, he doesn't have like a mean looking face. And then all of a sudden he's getting zapped by 4 of these electric streams. And, you see him get pissed. Like, what the hell? He's like,
I just was just chilling, guys.
He's like the blueprint for the Iron Giant, right?
But this is what you do to marshmallows. You roast them. That's
wrong.
literally why we have marshmallows.
I was just
okay?
apparitions here. You know, I've
Right.
never been in New York. And
He's so happy too. He's like, "Oh, this is so cool."
then it gets shot, and and someone yells at him, "Mother puss bucket," you know.
Right.
So, a big marshmallow in the big city. I mean, come on.
Continuity issue here. When if in some of the shots you see they have a church right next to that building,
Yeah.
but when he's up next to the building, he's basically standing where the church is supposed to be.
Well, and I think we get another ADR line where I think it's Bill Murray's like, nobody steps on a church in my town or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
And like clearly they're trying to cover up for it. And it's a
They're
weird
you could've
line.
just not
And
said
it doesn't,
anything.
it doesn't make sense.
You could have just not said anything.
It's one of those moments where I go like, I don't think, you don't want to put a hat on that joke. Like the fact that it visually doesn't work well, another, a strike against for that Oscar. I'm just gonna say.
But how snazzy did the Stay Puft Man look?
Oh, he looked good.
He was so happy.
He's just trying to make it to the harbor, guys.
Fleet Week. There's a deleted scene where the hat that he's wearing falls down and lands on a bunch of people. Not, it's soft looking, but I was like, ooh, no special effects. And I can see why they took that out.
Yeah.
And we all know what they use to simulate. I was gonna say, everybody knows what they use to simulate the marshmallow when it melted. Shaving cream.
Yeah, that sounds right.
So, and there was a point where the last time we see William Atherton, I don't know if it's the deleted scene or what, but they said that he's supposed to have like almost like a crap load dropped on him from a height, very high height. And William Atherton asked me, like, is this gonna hurt at all? And Ivan Reitman's like, I don't know. And so they tested it. Will. And so he's like, so they tested it on some other people first. They're like, it's not that bad. It's, it's soft stuff. It doesn't feel it. And then you see, I forget how many gallons of shaving cream get dropped on William Atherton, kind of their last commentary of hating on bureaucracies is what I think.
Right.
For sure.
That was funny. We don't know. Guess we'll
and then they said that so Sigourney, you see this moment of like true like sadness from Peter Venkman. Like he's sitting there like, and they see him, they're like, oh, Peter, I'm sorry. He's just like, Like I feel like that was legit good acting on Bill Murray's part to look
you
sad.
kind of skipped over the Cross the Streams.
Well, yes, I'm sorry. Cross streams, jumping ahead.
Which really was more of a combine the streams than a crossing the streams. But it works. It's fine. Yeah, they destroy whatever the portal is, and he thinks that he has just killed Dana. And which I do love. That they're all covered in marshmallow except for Venkman. Like he somehow, and I think like is this because he got slimed? Like is this because he got slimed earlier in the movie and Bill Murray was like, I'm not doing that again. Okay, I don't want all this stuff all over me again. Leave me alone.
Like you get one,
right?
Or shaving cream. That's it.
I had a note about the crossing of the streams that they basically came up with that on the fly, like while they were up there on the roof filming this. So like, you're like, how do we find, how do we defeat this thing? They're like, hey, well, we cross the streams like we said you shouldn't do. We're like, oh, okay, let's do that. So,
well, and that's really interesting because as we were talking about it earlier when Crystal brought it up, it's like that was like it's a screenwriting trope where it's like you set it up and then you pay it off, and so the fact that they didn't have that set up and just randomly came up with it. It's like, guys, like this was always right in front of you. You absolutely should have had this in the script. It works perfectly. It is exactly what it's supposed to do. And so it's just weird that it wasn't always there.
Is that, but I guess kind of that's why tropes are tropes, right? Because it's just like the natural progression of how you would normally write something.
Yeah, it's what you think of.
Maybe what was I gonna say? Oh, and then so Sigourney Weaver is like sealed in the statue, right?
And
I remember, and Ivan Reitman's like, yeah, we had to like get her out quick because she was actually sealed in that sucker. Oh, like
Oh,
that's why
was
they're
she?
like, yeah,
That's
they're like crushing
crazy.
it. And they're like, actually, she was sealed off, and they're like, we need to get her out. Like, so
The 80s
um,
were a thing, man. It's like,
Not wrong. You might
another
Why
die
would-
doing this, so let's go.
another kudos for Sigourney Weaver for being such a good team player with
for
you
sure.
know.
Yeah.
So, and then
I mean, the fact that she like, filmed an entire movie in space with a xenomorph. I mean, incredible.
Right?
and then one of my other favorite quotes, when Rick Moranis' character comes about and he's like confused and he's like, "Who are you guys?" I'm like, "Oh, we're the Ghostbusters." He's like, "Who does your taxes?"
Yeah, he's just straight
Like,
up back to
doesn't
accountant.
stop back to
Yeah.
the party, you know.
I mean, and even like when they get down and the Ghostbusters are being celebrated and Sigourney Weaver's with them, and like the guy comes, like the paramedic comes to take him away. He's like, I want to go with them. Like,
Yeah.
I want to be like, yeah, like he's got a couple of great moments here at the end for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, Ernie Hudson ends it with, the actual like dialogue. He's like, "I love this town,"
Yeah, for sure.
So
Yeah,
So that was the movie.
Ooh, we made it.
So
Yeah.
superlatives. Who do you think made the movie? Do you think there's any one person that, this movie wouldn't work without?
I mean, Beckman, it's got to be Murray, right? He's just so prevalent throughout the whole movie. Like, everybody is definitely important, but
Right.
just
I think Bill Murray is the funniest part of the movie. To me, I think Egon is the heart of the movie. So
Yeah.
I think
I'll
that for
agree with
me
that.
is I think that this movie could be funny without Egon, but I don't think this movie would resonate the way it has without him. So I'm gonna say Harold Ramis.
All right. Not that there was as many ghosts in this movie as the second one, but who was your favorite ghost? We didn't mention it, but I really loved, he was in it for a second, was the corpse cab driver who decided to drive like a maniac through New York.
I
It's
gotta
like
go
every other
with
cab driver.
I gotta go with the librarian ghost, or just trying to read
I like the
books in the
librarian.
afterlife. That's me.
Yeah.
That's what I would be doing. I'd be like, let me just catch up on my reading. Leave me alone.
I like the librarian, I think.
Nobody liked the dirty ghost.
I mean,
The succubus, I'm not a big fan of succubuses.
I was a Slimer fan. I was always a Slimer. I mean, he's gross.
The cartoon helped Slimer though when they made that.
Exactly. That's what I think. So I was definitely informed by the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon, for the longest time.
Yeah.
So
It was definitely.
And then we already talked about our favorite quotes in the movie. Like I said, mine's it's true. This man has no tech. It's probably my favorite.
Good one.
Yeah, that really is pretty good. That is pretty good.
So, I think that's all the things I had to talk about the movie. Does anybody else have anything that they want to point out?
Well,
the movie?
I guess
That other than the very last question that I'll ask once we've got all our commentary done. So
I was going to say, we were talking about how like just crazy with Sigourney Weaver was locked in that whatever. That movie, Ghostbusters, is just a year removed from the Twilight Zone movie, which 2 people died during the making of it because of the director's negligence.
There's some crazy stuff happened in the 70s and the 80s during
The
movies.
80s early, and that's why like that switch like changed. Is like obviously you can't have children dying while filming a movie.
Yeah.
Well, there was one too. I can't remember what movie it was. That what the actress was underwater and she almost drowned because they didn't pull her up in time. But I can't remember what movie it is right now. Gosh, it's escaping me.
I mean, there's been a lot of very near death experiences, and then obviously we've had some deaths for sure. I mean, even just as recently as a couple of years ago on that Alec Baldwin movie.
The gun. Yeah.
So there's stuff like that. I don't think I have anything more to say about this movie. I think we've talked through it pretty much.
Yeah, we talked. We
had a chance to say my piece. So I don't think I have anything more to add.
Aaron?
No, I think I'm pretty much. I agree with Robert on it. I don't think there's anything more I need to add to it. I liked what I liked about it so far. I think I hit everything I wanted to.
All right.
So,
Sorry for that last question.
like we asked, we said this was considered a good movie back then. Do we still consider it a good movie now?
Let's go with Robert, since he's literally the furthest away from it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good movie. I think that this is it's a lot of fun. Is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. It's got some problems. I pointed out, some of the things that I have problems with. But it's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of really good comedy and humor. It does have some, interesting themes and ideas that it explores. And ultimately, I had a good time with this movie and surprised myself with how much I enjoyed it after not enjoying it as much the first time I watched it. So I mean, like, this to me, this is like a solid like 7.5 out of 10. Like, I had a really good time with this movie, and I would definitely, I think, people need to make sure they're coming at it with the right expectations. I'm not going to put this up there as one of the greatest comedies of all time. And part of that is, I think most of the comedies that I think are the best comedies I've ever seen are the comedies I watched as a teenager. So I think you kind of have to come at those comedies from, like, there are some that I've enjoyed as an adult as well, but when I think of like my favorite comedies of all time, I'm going to think of Dumb and Dumber. I'm going to think of Tommy Boy. I'm going to think of Anchorman, and these are all movies that I saw when I was a teenager. So that's where it hits for me. Ghostbusters is not at that level for me, but I understand why it is for other people. So I had a great time with this movie. I absolutely think it is still good, for sure.
Okay. I think I have to agree with Robert on this one. I think it's still good. There's a couple scenes where, like, you said yourself, it's not the best. Like, some of it didn't age 100% well, but I still really enjoyed it. It's still something I would go back and watch again, I think.
Crystal?
What? Yeah.
Well, viewed through the lens of today, like, there are definitely parts of it that are problematic, which it absolutely are going to come into any movie that was made back in the 80s. But
They're
like,
still
overall,
making problematic movies today. Don't tell anyone.
that is cool. Let's not limit it.
It's not Revenge of the Nerds.
No.
Oh no, never. I think I only watched the movie ever once. It was disgusting even then. But the dialogue still 100% holds up in this movie. Like, the jokes that made me laugh when I was, 6 years old still make me laugh today. And then I get them better too, because now I'm adult. So they're still great. Like, this is still a good movie. This is still a good movie. And, like, definitely the good outweighs the bad, just like it always has. So I would definitely watch it again. It's still a good movie.
Well, I definitely think it's IMDb's on point with it being a 7.8. I think it's a great movie, not the bestest movie, but it still holds amazing part, in my heart. I think, I would put it up there comedy wise as any other comedies, but that's just me. But I believe it's still not only a good movie, but it's still a great movie.
Oh, there you go. So definitely, we talked a while about it. So I think at this point, we know where we're at, like, this movie. I think people should go still check it out and watch it. But I think we'll go ahead and end it here. I mean, we've been talking for a while, so definitely check out all of our videos later on this. Hopefully we'll do more with the other movies and stuff. I hope everyone enjoys it. Make sure you always like, comment, subscribe, everything on all the times, on everything at Official GYGO on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. I don't remember where the hell we're at anymore. Oh my God, my head's hurting. But thank you, everybody. Keith, you want to end it? You want to do the closing right here? Want to do the rest of it? Say bye, something.
From Keith, Robert, Crystal, and Aaron, thanks for stopping by.
It's still good.
Still good.
Still good.
Get your geek on.
Get your geek on.
We're live.
All right.